Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're starting a little bit early because, well, honestly, yeah, why not? We get to chat about stuff and talk about things. And what is going on today? Well, there's going to be a lot of things going on today. First off, we've got the campfire chat that's actually going to be happening, which is happening in about an hour, right? So it's going to start about an hour, 6 minutes, and 39 seconds. I got a little countdown timer. I'm trying to bring it up on the screen, but it's being a pain in the butt. It doesn't want to work. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't want to work. Nothing wants to work. Then we also have the patch notes apparently coming directly after that, so that's going to be a whole thing. So there's we're going to take a look at the patch notes. I have come across some information on the patch notes. They said there was going to be what do you call it, like red text, which is what they usually do when they make changes. So they're going to be like the same patch notes that we saw before for PTR, except there's going to be like red annotations wherever the patch notes have changed to something else. So we're gonna go back over those patch notes that they're coming out with. Also, depending on the information that we get, we're also going to be doing some theory crafting too. I'm probably going to pull up some theory crafting right now. Might as well. There's a lot of fun stuff going on in this next patch, which is I was playing around with some of it during the season season PTR test realm thing. And let's pull up Diablo 4 Life. Let's see if he's got some of the new uniques in here yet. Eh. Eh. All right. Season of the construct. We're still on season of the construct. Let's see if he has the items though. So like the gloves. There's the new gloves that are in here. Yeah, the flame and the weaver gloves. So these are the ones that when casting a firebolt through firewall, it splits into 4 bolts, dealing 30% more damage. Those are pretty darn neat. Let's hop into chat too. I'm sure we got some Leon in here at the very least. Or he's in the D2R. I'll have the D4. Maybe he'll join us in the D4. Haha. Oh, freaking Acrid already giving out gift memberships before the stream even started? What the hell, Acrid? Looks like Walking Dude got a membership. Pablo, Irene, Circle of Pharaohs, and Hawkeye. Grats. Grassy booties.
How dare you talk about D4 and the D2 chat? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, not allowed to do that. People get upset. You know what? Since Acrid gave away 5 subs, sounds like I need to give away 5 subs. That's what that sounds like. Let's see here. Oh, I didn't do a poll today? What? Didn't even do a poll?
Your mama's a poll.
Your mama's a poll. Your daddy's a poll. How about that?
Need a Dirk Diggler or a Gold Dagger?
Haha. There we go. See, I doubled it up. He gave away 5, and I gave away 5 on top of his 5. I did a double up. I forgot to do a poll today. Oh yeah, guess who's with me today? We got Mr. Chinchilla's with me today. See, Mr. Chinchilla. You're a good little boy. You're Mr. Dusty Bones. What are you doing, Mr. Dusty Bones? You're a good little boy. He's taking a nap in there. He's tired. He said, "Look, I'm sleeping. Leave me alone. I'm taking a nap." This is terrible. Why do I always come up with these terrible polls? There you go. Here's a terrible poll for you guys. I know how you guys love my terrible polls. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
I can only guess which one's gonna win.
Oh, it's already winning. There's nothing like a good nap, man. I tell you what. My favorite naps are the ones where like you go to sleep and you wake up and like you don't know where you are anymore. You don't know what time you're in or like what home you're in or like you're just like, where am I? I don't. I've lost all train of thought and mind. I remember one of the first times I slept over at a friend's house, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I had no clue where I was. Like totally had forgotten that I was sleeping over at my friend's house, and I was looking around the room in the dark, and I couldn't figure out where I was.
Oh no.
I was like, "Where the am I?" Doesn't make any sense. So who got some memberships? We got Dragos, Matthew, Atlantis, Killamotus, Krantz, and Jof. All right. They are terrible and yet good at the same time. 62% have already chosen I napped with your mom, so. Silly, silly. I expect that these Flame Weaver gloves are going to be a big hit in the coming season, so that's going to be a whole thing. I think people are gonna love this effect. As good as some of the other effects are, and as brain dead as they are, and I hate to say it, but like the Dust Devils are like really brain dead for a mechanic. This mechanic, the one that like has you increase the number of fire bolts that you have by using your firewall. When I was playing around with it during PTR, it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Not only did it have a tactical element to it because you could place it in front of you and spread the firebolts out, or you could put it far away from you and you could shotgun the firebolts directly into the target. If you put it at the edge of the screen, you could like double the firing distance of your firebolts and hit things that were like really far away. I mean, there was a lot going on with the tactical like sort of like mind of using these abilities. And of course, shotgunning it was how you got like most of your single target damage. And then when you were fighting big groups, you would try and make sure that you could, hit like the entire pack, but you didn't want like your firebolts wasted. So it was like a whole thing. And then they added all these other effects that you could put onto weapons and stuff where you could have like the double casts. So instead of just shooting one firebolt that turned into four, you were shooting like three firebolts that turned into 12, which was kind of crazy.
I think the Sork got the two most like fun changes or new builds with the Fireball and the Frozen Orb. I think those look really fun. I think the Necro got some of just the strongest buffs. I think a Thorns Necro would be insane.
Yeah, definitely, because they inherit 100% thorns now. The bone mages. Like I've never really wanted to use the bone mages, but they changed the bone mages now to
Right.
basically have the ability to randomly cast bone splinters and bone spear, which is kind of insane. So if you're set up as a bone necromancer, I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense at this point not to use the skeletal bone mages because having 5 minions that can cast your main hand damage spell randomly is kind of insane. Like, I mean, imagine you can do, I don't know, like 15 million damage with a bone spear, right? Well, they can do 15 million damage with a bone spear because they inherit 100% of your stats, which means that they basically have all the same buffs and everything that you do, and they're firing your bone spears, which means they're doing the same damage you're doing. And there's 5 of them. And then you can also use yours too. So it's basically just a way that you can almost multiply your damage by 5, which is kind of insane. That whole thing with the bone mages is probably going to get exploited a lot this season.
Yeah.
They also added a pull-in to the Iron Golem now. So the Iron Golem has a pull-in and can basically function as a replacement for Corpse Tendrils. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Corpse Tendrils is still better, but it does allow you to have a pull-in where you wouldn't have otherwise had one. Because, the Golem takes up a spot, and so it kind of sucks that he takes up a spot, but at the same time, since he has a pull-in now and he's taking up a spot, you can free up the pull-in spot for him, and it actually works out kind of nicely. I was playing around with that during the season. They also basically made the freaking skeletal defender like warriors like immortal, so they just won't die anymore. There's like a option on the skeletal defenders now. I don't know. He doesn't have this all updated yet, but like it basically just gives them like 99% damage reduction for quite a long time. So they're basically immortal. Oh, what's up, bub? What are some of the other cool things? Like the armor that they added, Tyrael's Might, looks like it's going to be absolutely insane.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, having permanent access to the well, it doesn't say that it's the artillery shrine, but it pretty much is the artillery shrine. It says Divine Barrage, but honestly, there's tons of characters that can get really good use out of something like this. And as you guys have seen with the artillery shrine, it's more effective with like big AOE skills because it spreads all over the entire screen. And I was thinking about this with some of the characters like the Frozen Orb, the new Frozen Orb Sorceress. The Frozen Orb Sorceress is going to be spamming Frozen Orbs, and every single one of those Frozen Orbs is going to be putting out artillery projectiles. Can you imagine like this on the Frozen Orb Sorceress, just having tons and tons and tons of extra projectiles coming out of the Frozen Orbs, dishing out extra damage? I mean, she can already put out what, like 2 or 3 herself per cast, and then all her little conjurations put out like one themselves, and then she spawns additional conjurations, so she can have like what is it, like five has like 5 or 6 ice blades and like 6 of the lightning spears, and then she can have like 3 hydras or something like that. So like the number of projectiles that you could have coming out of something like this is kind of insane. It's
That
also
might be the first one to craft.
This also seems like a really powerful one for a summon necromancer too, because I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, but every time your summons attack, they also emit a projectile. Now that'll be something that we need to test, whether or not this actually does work for the summons or whether it's only you. But if it does work for the summons, I could definitely see this as an extremely powerful necromancer item as well. Because, if you got like the full army running and they're all attacking and they're all going to be shooting the artillery projectiles, and it's just going to be a massive amount of additional damage for you. Can you get a 4 open socket bow in normal or only nightmare? You can get it in normal, but you have to socket it. So the four open sockets won't drop in normal. He's talking about Diablo 2, by the way. It doesn't drop in normal, but it does. You can socket it in normal. So if you find yourself like a decent bow and you take it to Larzik, it'll socket to 4. But you won't be able to find one with 4. Not natively. My nose is acting up. It's freaking allergy season. Go outside and you just get like sugar coated and green dust. Sugar coated and green dust. What's that other item that they added? There's so many of them this season. We can go to the patch notes. That sounds like fun. Let's go over to the old patch notes and we'll take a look at some of the new items they added. While we're waiting on them to get their do-jank started. Not that one. No, not that one either, because it was the PTR specific patch notes, which is this one? Yes, this one. Yeah, that had the Yen's Blessing unique boots. That's right. Casting a skill is a 20 to 30% chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown. This effect can only occur once every 12 seconds. This one seemed kind of interesting too, especially since they're boots and there's not like a lot of really good boot slots. So basically just a 30% chance to just randomly cast one of your non-mobility, non-ultimate skills, which there's a lot of skills that are non-mobility, non-ultimate skills. And as long as they're currently on cooldown, so that basically allows you to spam them. You know,
I mean,
it encourages you to spam them, basically.
rogue imbuments are definitely one. Like you just have
Yeah.
imbuments randomly casting.
Yeah, so you're just constantly getting random casts of your abilities. I mean, Druid too, probably. All his defensive abilities, like Hurricane. You get like there's a bunch of stuff that this could potentially be useful for. I mean, free casts of abilities that are on cooldown certainly isn't a terrible thing. And depending on the kind of character you're running, it could be better than some others. I don't know. Maybe this would work really good for that crazy druid that I was running that was like, remember I was doing like all the defensive skills and I was using Flesh Ripper and then I was like spamming the defensive skills back and forth. This would allow me to spam even more defensive skills. Probably.
Yep.
What was that? This aspect of the Frosty Strides, we were playing around with that during the PTR and it was kind of crazy. Yeah, basically every time you evade while below like 45 to 60% life, it'll freeze enemies close to you and it dishes out like a massive amount of cold damage. People were actually looking at it and how ridiculous it was. They seem to be really focusing on like the barbarian this season, so we'll see what kind of patch note changes they make. But they also added these new pants for the barbarian that basically just give a bunch of random effects to each one of the ancients when you summon them, and there was a whole bunch of stuff on the ancients in the barbarian tree. So it looks like they're really kind of pushing the ancients this season for the barbarians, and same thing with double swing. They added some nice double swing gloves, fixed the dust devils, and the dust devils were on a lot of things, but they were focused around the double swing a lot. Although it seems like Whirlwind might be the favorite for dust devil spamming. Just hold down the button basically, and they just keep popping out.
Yeah, there's numerous aspects that do it too. Like the basic build can do it because they have an aspect that spawns devils when you reach maximum fury.
Mm-hmm. This Earthbreaker ring for the landslide's really neat. Like if you're a big fan of landslide, there's a lot of ways you can spam landslide these days. With the one from the poison creeper, and then this one also basically gives you like an extra do-jank after the poison after the landslide goes off. Now I did test this during PTR and it wasn't working with the poison creeper landslide, but it was working with the casted landslide. And then I did notice that the casted landslide was giving me the buff, and the buff was actually working with the poison creeper landslide. So it was actually affecting the first poison creeper landslide, just not in the direct way. Not really sure about the Wild Heart Hunger boots. This one seems to be again focused around a build switching back and forth between the two forms. So that's definitely one of those ones where you'd be switching a lot. They did add this crazy thing for Maul, though, which is kind of neat. It's basically like it turns Maul into Frenzy, basically, like on the Barbarian. So it's when you hit at least one enemy with Maul, it increases the attack speed by 1 to 2%, and you gain 1 to 3% damage reduction for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, which is basically exactly what Frenzy does. So if you want to make a Frenzy Bear this season, it seems like a Frenzy Bear is on the table. Not only do you get a nice attack speed bonus, but you also get damage reduction while you're using the Maul ability. And, I mean, it could go well with the Wildheart Hunger boots as well, because you could use Maul as your main ability for, your basic, and then you could swap over to like a Werewolf ability for your main core skill or something. Could be an interesting way to utilize basically some of these swapping items, making sure that your basic is the bear and then everything else is the werewolf, and usually that works out pretty well. I didn't get a chance to test out this Ebon Piercer amulet. I didn't get it while I was on PTR. It says Blight also shoots 4 smaller projectiles that pierce enemies and deal shadow damage over 3 seconds, which sounds kind of neat.
That was a top Necro build, I believe, on the PTR.
hmm and then on top of that, there was another thing that they added that was like really good for shadow as well. I think it had something to do with the shadow mages being able to cast something. I can't remember. And I was like, holy crap, that would make it really easy to keep your Shadow Blight key passive up. And I can't remember what that was right off the top of my head. Oh, yeah, this one right here. There it is. The aphotic aspect. Skeletal priests empower your skeletal warriors attacks to deal shadow damage and have a 5 to 15% chance to stun enemies. So basically, you can turn all of your warriors into shadow damage dealers as well, which is going to give you a massive number of hits. And since the whole Shadow Blight key passive thing revolves around basically having your Shadow Blight key passive proc as many times as possible, and it takes 10 attacks to proc the Shadow Blight key passive. You can imagine that if you have your Skeletal Priests, your Skeletal Mages and your Skeletal Warriors all dealing shadow damage, and then you're dealing shadow damage, and you're using the Ebon Piercer, which gives you an additional shadow damage projectiles, the number of attacks that you would have on a rotation would be pretty insane. I mean, you're talking about like what is that? Like 5 mages and like 7 warriors. So you've already got over 10 attacks per second there, which means that your Shadow Blight key passive is just going to be popping off like crazy. And then there's a lot of things that you can use to beef up your Shadow Necromancer, which is going to give you more damage for how many times your Shadow Blight key passive is going off. So setting up your Necromancer with this kind of setup where you're basically your warriors and your mages are both dealing out the shadow damage, and then you got the Ebon Piercer on. You would probably have anywhere between like 2 to 3 Shadow Blight key passives going off like per rotation. It would be kind of insane. And you would be able to maintain, there's an aspect on the Necromancer. Let me pull this up real quick. Well, there's 2 of them. So one of them is easy to get. It's you deal 60 to 120% increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times. That's the difficult one, and this is the easy one, which is each time the Shadow Blight key passive deals damage to enemies, it increases the next Shadow Blight's damage within 10 seconds by 45%, stacking up to 5 times. So see, this one stacks, right? And this one's easy to maintain. But this one requires that you basically have the Shadow Blight key passive activate 10 times within 6 seconds, essentially. And if you can make it happen 10 times in 6 seconds, every single rotation, then you can maintain this 120% multiplier relatively easily. And you throw that on an amulet slot, and it turns from a 120% multiplier and a 240% multiplier. And so utilizing these new aspects, the Ebon Piercer amulet and the aphotic aspect, you should be able to easily maintain that 240% multiplier from the blighted aspect, which is going to be a huge buff to all of your shadow damage. I can't really imagine it not working once you have the skeletal priests, the skeletal mages, the Ebon Piercer amulet, and everything running all at the same time. It should be nuts. The Cura's Embrace, unique gloves with the blood surge consumes corpses to cause mini novas. That's kind of an interesting one, especially considering there's already a blood surge amulet. There's the what is it called? The Death Speaker's pendant. So you get mini novas casted on your minions, and then the gloves allow you to have mini novas casted from the corpses that are nearby. So you basically got 2 different sets of mini novas coming out, which means that the entire screen is basically going to be covered in mini novas at that point. And that's a blood damage setup. I'm not really sure about blood surge, but it definitely seems like they're trying to push blood surge here too. Just even more. I mean, it really depends on how many corpses you've got laying around, but that's a whole other thing. The rogue gets exploding arrows from rapid fire, which sounds pretty cool, especially considering rapid fire is kind of very single target-ish. That should be a really fun one, the Scoundrel Kiss unique ring, because when I played Rapid Fire last season, one of the things I really noticed about Rapid Fire was that while it did do decent damage to single target, it was really bad at AoE, and I had to basically use another ability to keep like my AoE in a decent like state. But having exploding arrows come out of the Rapid Fire sounds like that will pretty much fix the zero AoE damage that Rapid Fire has and turn it into more of an AoE ability, which should help out tremendously for Rapid Fire. I didn't get a chance to test this one either on PTR, but I mean, just looking at it, I can pretty much tell that it's going to be good. Rapid Fire is already really good single target, and adding any AoE damage to it all is going to be amazing. I did hear a bunch about the stun grenade stuff, but I didn't get a chance to test that one out either. But I did hear there were some pretty crazy grenade builds on PTR. Just like massive damage grenades popping out of people's buttholes. What's the matter? What are you digging in there? Mr. Doosty Boons. He's digging. What are you digging? He likes to sleep in my shirt, guys. It's a chinchilla. This is going to be a big build this season. The Fractured Winter Glass. I tested it out, and honestly, I could already tell it was really powerful. I half expect them to dial this one back a little bit because it was really powerful. I don't really know how to explain it other than everything's frozen basically all the time, so most of the time you have no trouble clearing any content because nothing is attacking you. So you pretty much just walk through the dungeons and you cast your like conjurations and your frozen orbs. There's so many frozen orbs on the screen at any given time that the monsters are all like caked in ice. And if they don't die before they unfreeze, I mean, they're usually dead shortly thereafter. And just absolutely insane like setup. A lot of people are going to be interested in setting up the Frozen Orb build. One thing I will say about this, though, is I tried to set this up without the unique amulet. It wasn't particularly amazing. So keep that in mind if you want to do this build for the Season 4, is that you might want to wait until you actually get this unique amulet before you swap into that build, because it was not really that great without the amulet. This one also was really good, especially with all of the new basic build items that they added into the game. So, you know, recently they've added like the Season 2 vampiric powers back in, so that you can use them for the increased, you know, basic skill damage, and they also added a couple other basic skill items. So using the basic skill items and the Flame Weaver gloves, you can really get some absolutely crazy fire damage going on. I played around with this, and I was really impressed with not only like the amount of damage that it did, but also the overall like fun in using it. Where I did find that this was more powerful, this was a lot more boring. Like you pretty much just pressed one button the entire time, and you didn't even really have to use much brain power to do anything because the conjurations were pretty much doing everything for you. Whereas this one was much more fun and engaging because you had to like choose where to put your firewalls and then fire your firebolts through the firewalls, and it actually worked out surprisingly well for, you know, just like engaging you and having fun with the content. Go in your little hole then. This one was really interesting too. I used this on a couple of the builds this season, or in a PTR, just to see. It's the one that gives you a damage bonus when you have no defensive skills on your action bar. And I can totally see what they're trying to do here, because most sorceress builds usually end up having like 3 or 4 defensive skills on their bar. But I was able to with the Frozen Orb build, basically, because you have to put all the conjurations on there anyway, because you kind of want to like be able to cast them at will. And I ended up using this, and it actually worked out pretty well with the build, because I had no defensives on the build, and I was using the defensive legendary ability instead, which worked out okay. I didn't really play around too much with the flamethrower aspect. The incinerate splits into three beams, but it basically does exactly what it says. The center beam stays the same, and it's the same size and length. That's what she said. And the two side beams are smaller, and they basically shoot out like just like this, essentially, giving you kind of an AOE with your incinerate. Incinerate isn't really the best ability in the entire world, and I mean it's okay. But honestly, if you're thinking about the incinerate build, you might as well just do the Flame Weaver build because the Flame Weaver build is basically everything that the incinerate build is and more. Plus, it doesn't suck. um, where was the? There are so many changes in here, and it's going to be interesting to see like what annotations they make to all this because there's a lot of stuff that they're apparently going to be going over, and that's kind of the whole thing. So we're going to be going over the dev update, and a lot of the stuff that they promised to talk about during this dev update is basically the changes that they've made or the community feedback has caused, you know, in the season from PTR, because we already know what happened in PTR and what was wrong in PTR. So hopefully they'll be going over like the fixes to a lot of that stuff, and we'll get an idea of, you know, what's going on. And there's a lot of little things that were wrong that I'm hoping that they're going to address. Obviously the veiled crystal thing is pretty big. They really need to fix that. Honestly, it's, you know, they complained about releasing PTR. I don't know if you heard this, Leon, but they complained about PTR and they were like, "We're giving away all the secrets and there's going to be no surprise for the season." Can you imagine if they had released the season with that horrible veiled crystal shortage problem?
I don't understand where that is coming from. Like, I understand that discovery, you know, they want it to be the thing and stuff like that, but most games get data mined anyway. And I'd rather have a good game than a buggy game. Like, because everything's going to be discovered within the first week anyway, and then everything's going to be buggy.
Well,
So,
that's what I said. I was because there was a post on Facebook and they were doing the same thing. A lot of people were crying and complaining about it, and I'm like, well, maybe if they had a good track record,
right.
like
Right.
maybe if we could trust the fact that their patches wouldn't be buggy messes, then maybe, just maybe, we could be like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, you want some surprise? You know, don't tell us then. It'll be all right. But when every single patch is a buggy mess and they're literally just, well, you know, they're constantly making horrible, like, game-breaking errors. I mean, can you blame us for not trusting them at that point? Can you? Can you really? I wonder if I could take my Bone Spirit Necromancer and convert it into a summon. A summon Spirit Necromancer. I don't know. I'm assuming that when the mages cast their Bone Spear, their free Bone Spear, it's probably going to use my Bone Spear, right? So it's not going to be like it'll be based off the skill level that I have in Bone Spear.
I hope so.
Hmm. Because if I'm gonna do a Bone Spirit build, like, because I don't really see like a huge difference in it. You know, if I grab Bone Spirit instead of Bone Spear, I mean it'll be a little bit weaker on the mage side, but I mean I should be able to kind of like incorporate the two since they're both bone, and I'm gonna be using the bone passives, and I'll still be using ossified essence. And, you know, like in general, I'm still going to be set up for bone abilities, so the bone spear should still be getting quite the buff. Just I won't be casting it. Either that or I go with bone spear anyway and just play around with the, like the double cast, because they have like the double casting bone spear now. A lot of that double casting stuff is kind of insane. I kind of feel bad for the abilities that don't have it now.
Right.
Like because when I was looking at like, you know, like the double casting tempering stuff, like you could get double casting firebolt and you could get double casting fireball and you could get, but you couldn't get double casting, say like what was it, blizzard wasn't didn't have a double cast, and there was a couple other abilities that didn't have the double cast. And honestly, the double cast is kind of crazy. I mean, it's straight, that's straight up just doubling your damage. If you have a projectile-based attack, whatever it is, and you can have a like a 40% chance to cast that ability twice, I mean, why wouldn't you choose that? It just seems like a no-brainer on pretty much anybody's account for any kind of projectile attacks. I mean, bones. There was bone spear, bone splinters. Weren't you thinking about doing a bone splinters basic build?
Yeah, at one point, I think it was last season, I was thinking about it.
I mean, well, there you go. Now you got the ability to double cast bone splinters, and then you got all the crazy basic items. You might be able to make it work because you get 3 bone splinters, and then you get what is it? Doesn't it have split again, hitting the same enemy 3 times? But then you get your double cast, so then you spamming those. You could use the mages, and they would be spamming bone splinters too. The only thing I don't like about the bone mages though is the bone mages kill themselves. I feel like you'd have to go with some sort of healing setup. Um, because the bone mages basically shoot off pieces of their body, dealing heavy damage to themselves and killing themselves after a certain number of hits, which means they constantly have to be revived on a regular basis. Yeah, unfortunately, it's like micromanaging. You have to micromanage them. I feel like if you were going to run that build, you probably want to run like the Ring of the Sacrilegious Soul, just so that you don't have to constantly keep resing them all the time. That way, at least you have the Ray Skeleton going off
Right.
on a regular basis, reviving them. I mean, granted, you probably still have to repopulate them now and then, but at least with the Ring of the Sacrilegious, it would make the micromanaging of the Bone Mages a little less painful. Hmm. I can't remember what the changes were for the Bone Mages. There were specific changes for the Bone Mages. Bone Mages. All right, here we go. Oh, Acrid with another 5 memberships. Thank you, Acrid. Kai got a membership this time. Colin, Stefano, Radioactive Goat Man. I got a Radioactive Goat Man in chat? What the hell? Radioactive Goat Man and Wontons. Congratulations, guys. Now you got access to all the emotes. All the emotes. Let's go. Chonkers. Chonk Chonk Frog. Chonk Chonk Chonk. Zodrune. Chonk Chonk Chonk. Jarune. Chonk Chonk Chonk. Annie. How about that? Let's see here. Yeah, so Bone Mages have a 25% chance to cast Bone Splinters or Bone Spear if it is equipped on your skills. Okay, so it does have to actually be equipped on your skills. Interesting. This also gives you kind of like a reason not to use Bone Splinters. So think about it. If they have a 25% chance to cast Bone Splinters or Bone Spear, and you have Bone Splinters and Bone Spear on your bar, then you basically are splitting your percent chance for them to cast Bone Spear, which you don't want to do. So you're probably better off not having Bone Splinters on your bar and using a different basic skill so that the Bone Mages will cast Bone Spear more often. That make sense?
Yep.
I mean, and honestly, that sounds like a pretty solid strategy, because if they're spamming Bone Spears and and their Bone Spears are doing the same damage as yours, which, obviously it's going to take some testing, but if their Bone Spears are basically doing the same damage as yours, there ain't no reason why you wouldn't want 5 mages spamming the same Bone Spears that you've got. And it's a 25% chance. 25% chance is pretty good. I mean, if you have 5 mages, just as an example, so if you have 5 mages with a 25% chance per cycle, then that's a 1 in 4 chance, essentially, and you have 5 mages, which means that you're definitely going to get at least 1 cast per 5 attacks. And then that also means that you're looking at anywhere between 1 to 5 attacks. So it could be 1 to 5 Bone Spears, depending on how it procs per cycle, which is an average of, what is that, 1 plus 5 divided by 2. You're talking about an average of 3 Bone Spears per cycle. is what you're looking at. Of course, sometimes it's going to be 0 and sometimes it's going to be 5, but it should average out to about 3 bone spears per cycle if you have 5 mages, which is nuts. They also added a fortify for the bone mages too, which seems kind of interesting. So the bone mages drop a corpse when they die, and then they also grant 3% maximum life as fortify. And then the iron golem. This is the pulls in enemy. So the second upgrade now pulls in enemies and also makes them vulnerable when it pulls them in. So they basically turn the iron golem into like a secondary form of like corpse tendrils. It doesn't quite have the range of corpse tendrils, I will say that much, but it does work pretty well. I think corpse tendrils range is definitely better. But if you're setting up a summon necromancer and you just want to have a pull in, it definitely is a pull in that you can have other than corpse tendrils. They also took away all the movement penalty from Blood Mist, so it might be a pretty good season to play around with Blood Mist builds. They took away the penalty, and they also made it so that
Aspect of speed, I believe.
well, yeah, the blood-soaked aspect now gives you a 20% bonus. So not only does the Blood Mist ability not reduce your speed anymore, but the aspect that was removing the penalty now simply increases your speed. So you should be able to move pretty fast while in the Blood Mist form. They also added an unstoppable for the Necromancers for the first time. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but the Necromancer basically had no unstoppable, like at all, according to this point. They had Blood Mist, which was sort of like an unstoppable. It was more like an invincible that also basically made it so that you couldn't attack. What would that really be called in a game? More like a bunker ability, like where you like put yourself in a bunker and you're invincible, but you also can't perform any action while you're inside the bunker, basically. It's
Right.
it's more like a bunker ability, and there were some ways that you could attack with Blood Mist, but for the most part, like it was a like last ditch effort, make yourself invincible while also taking you out of the fight for that time period. But one of the golems now has a unstoppable attached to it. I can't remember which one. Or is it just all the golems? I think it might just be all the golems.
I thought it was iron, but I'm not sure.
Let me see if I can find it real quick. Boop, boop, boop. A golem. This ability can now be activated while crowd controlled, and activating the golem ability makes the player unstoppable. Yeah, so it's all the golems. So all the golems now make you unstoppable. So if you have the golem on your bar, you now have an unstoppable. So if you use the iron golem, not only do you have a pull in, but you have an unstoppable, and your pull in is also your unstoppable. So you basically have both now, which is actually pretty cool. So for the first time ever, the Necromancer actually has an unstoppable ability, unlike before. Now you can also use I didn't because they brought back the Vampiric Metamorphosis power, so you can also use that one if you want to. That one was brought back in season 3. I'm also kind of interested in potentially setting up a druid summoner as well. They really gave a lot of buffs to the druid pets. The wolves also gain unstoppable when the skill is cast. Um, they also set up the like obviously all of the summons got tons of buffs because they inherit 100% of their stats now. So any of the summon monsters like the wolves, the poison creeper, the ravens, of course, all of the necromancer summons. They also noted some of the other ones too, like that were apparently also counting as summons on the other classes that weren't technically summons. They all inherit 100% of your stats now, so they're kind of crazy.
Druid had some of the strongest builds as well in the PTR.
Yeah. Mm. What were the uniques added for the druid specifically? Or let's see, we got the cooldown rusher. Oh yeah, they beefed up Claw a little bit. I'm not really sure why they beefed up Claw. Claw is already one of the most powerful basic skills that the druid has, but for some reason they beefed up claw. So there it is. Oh yeah, they were doing a lot of changes to lacerate. I still don't think lacerate's going to be useful, but it they keep playing around with it, and I think the main issue with lacerate is just the way that the ability actually works. Like we were talking about with blood mist, it locks you down basically. So while it's active, you're just kind of on lockdown and you can't do anything. And granted, you're kind of invincible during the time period that you use it, but half the time when I would use it, the boss would just like walk out of it. I'm not sure if you had that happen to you, Leon, but like I would literally tap the lacerate button and the monster would just walk out of it and just laugh at me. And I'm like, "Oh, all right. Rude. You're supposed to stand
Yeah.
here and die." They buffed up flesh render a lot too. So it used to be only debilitating roar and blood howl, and now it's any defensive skill. So basic,
Bulwark.
basically, you can use bulwark. You can use what is it?
Cyclone.
Cyclone armor. You can use debilitating roar and blood howl, and they'll all spam the poison damage on nearby enemies. Which I had a build set up before they even added this willpower bonus, and before they changed this, I had a build set up with this, and it actually did work surprisingly well. But now that they've changed this, it should be even more insane, especially if you use Nature's Fury, and then you grab the aspect that basically makes debilitating roar and blood howl function as earth and storm skills under the Nature's Fury ability. You can basically at that point just like spam defensive skills. So you would literally just be spamming all four of your defensive skills constantly, and every single time you spam a defensive skill, you would be poisoning all nearby enemies, which I'm assuming would add up to some pretty crazy damage, given that you can literally spam all of them. And of course, with Nature's Fury, if you're using the symbiotic aspect, you can reset the cooldown of the opposing skill by spamming the other skill. So, like for instance, with the Earth skills, like you know, you can spam say Claw, for instance, and if you have Claw as a Storm skill, spamming Claw resets Earth and Bulwark, and it would also reset Debilitating Roar. And then you would have those constantly up, and then every single time you use Earthen Bulwark or Debilitating Roar, there's a good chance it would also use Blood Howl or the Cyclone Armor. And it basically goes like that constantly, where they just constantly go back and forth between each other, and you end up with like all of the defensive abilities active 100% of the time, which is kind of dumb stupid in terms of defensive capability. The main issue is if you can get the offensive capability high enough to dish out the damage that you need. How do barbs look? The barbs had probably the most broken and the most controversial ability, which was the Dust Devils. They were so big and so ridiculous that I'm pretty sure they spawned many "that's what she said" jokes. But literally, you couldn't see anything. Like I had a couple of them in my group on PTR, and you pretty much just took your hands off the mouse and keyboard because there was pretty much nothing you could do at that point. You just kind of stood there and just sat back and watched the display of awesome natural fury that was the tornadoes flitting all over your screen. um, 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 um. At one point, one of the people who was doing the Dust Devils was like, "I can go get my barb," and I was like, "No, no, don't get your barb. No, no." They're like, "I can just go get." It. I was like, "No, no, don't go get them. We don't want your barb. Your barb is mean. Can't see anything. Can't see anything. Can't see the floor. Can't see my face. Can't see nothing. Don't want it." I have a feeling that if they don't fix the Dust Devil problem, which I'm assuming they will, but if they don't, nobody's gonna want you in the group if you're a Dust Devil barbarian. Like if you join the group and you're a Dust Devil barbarian, people are just gonna leave.
Well, the thing that people forget about is the Were NATO Druid is actually just as crazy as the Dust Devils right now. And I think it's just the effect they need to change and maybe the amount too. But the Were NATO throws as many tornadoes on the screen,
Let me
if
guess.
not more.
There's also ability that makes them bigger.
They get like double or triple casts of them. So there's just way more on the screen.
Blind. Yeah, the blind barb. It's you know what it reminds me. It reminds me of season 1 all over again. You remember the necromancer with the blight that was like blacking out the entire screen where you couldn't see your character or anything that was going on because the blight was stacking on top of itself and making it so that like the whole screen was just pitch black. That's what
Yep.
it reminds me of. But we're back to season 1 all over again with the stupid blight necromancer. The blight romancer. I don't know what's going to happen with the barbarian too. I think the barbarian got more buffs than God at this point. I don't think they realize what they did with the tempering system. So the tempering system is this system that basically allows you to add an affix onto an item, right? And some of the affixes that they allow you to add onto the items are things like HP and like very, very specific things like allowing you to spawn bigger dust devils and stupid stuff like that, right? But when you're thinking about the barbarian has one, two, three, four weapons. Two of them are two-handed weapons, which of course get bigger stats than other weapons. And they can literally just go HP, 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 HP on all four weapons. The barbarian is going to have the most crazy hit points, like out of all the characters this season. The other characters are going to be lagging behind hit point wise by miles. I think somebody in PTR said they got the barbarian's hit points up to like 200,000 or something, which sounds absolutely insane, but it's totally possible considering that they changed it so that you can put hit points on every single piece of equipment. So you can put hit points on your helmet, armor, gloves, pants, boots, weapon, two-handed weapon, other one-handed weapon, other two-handed weapon, ring, and amulet. Which means you can literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And technically, I think the two-handers count as 2, so that's 13, 14. So you can have 14 HP modifiers on your equipment at this point. What's the average amount of HP you would get from each modifier? Was it like 1,000 or something?
I think it was even more than that, but yeah.
But you can get easily like 14,000 HP just from like your equipment. And then of course you can add in the like all of the plus
The
percentage
percentages.
bonuses on top of that, and you know like in rubies in your equipment, so you get like your 5, 10, 15, 20, like or whatever, like 5 was it 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, so you get like your 25% there. And then you can add in more HP through your Paragon board, and by the time
And the
you're
skill tree,
it's
like
it's
18% there.
and honestly, this leads us to another interesting thing, which is this passive right here. So the Thorns Barbarian has always been a thing, but this outburst ability that where you gain thorns based on each 50 bonus maximum life that you have. I mean, at this point, you might as well just say that there's probably going to be like a massive maximum life thorns build, and I don't really see why not. I
Yeah.
mean, you just pop 3 points into that, so you get your like your full bonus from Outburst, and then of course you can grab Tough as Nails, so you get the free bleed. But then you basically just stack up as much HP as you possibly can, stack up as much thorns as you can, and honestly, the character should be absolutely nigh unkillable with like 200,000 HP and massive amounts of thorns.
You know what would be interesting with that, Ginger? Is since they're buffing ancients so much, I believe the ancients do count as minions now, and they inherit your thorns.
So
So
you would have 4 thorns, and
if you keep them up 100, yeah, and I think you could with the right
so
items.
and another thing to add to that is the one of the aspects that you would utilize with a thorns build is the needle. What is it? The needle flare aspect. They said in the patch notes that the needle flare aspect now works on minions. That was apparently something that they changed. So it apparently it wasn't working on minions before. So whenever like your minion took damage and then the thorns was affecting the minion, it wasn't activating the needle flare, it was only activating it when you got hit. So going along with your reasoning, if you're summoning your ancients, then the ancients are also now going to be triggering the needle flare aspect.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that wasn't a thing, but it was apparently in the patch notes. There was a whole line in here about the needle flare aspect. See, it says now also applies thorns to necromancer minions. So, I mean, they deliberately put that in there, and I would assume that necromancer minions probably also refers to other minions as well. They seem to leave things out here and there, but if it wasn't working on necro minions, it probably wasn't working on druid minions, and it probably wasn't working on a couple other minions. So it probably just works on all minions in general now. What was there was a thing in here about the minions, and I think they included some of the other minions in the equation. Where was that at? Ah! They don't have it in here. Well, they had it in here. Honestly, the minions inheriting 100% of your stats is insane too. A lot of people, I mean, I can't really express it any more than this, but don't sleep on the minions this season. Like, I was playing around with the minions, and they were straight up just tanking things on their own and murdering stuff without any assistance from me. And it's kind of hard to explain just how powerful they've become, but I guess that whole only inheriting 30% of your stats thing was really what was holding them back the entire time. Because now that they're inheriting 100% of your stats, it's kind of it's just ridiculous. Like they're pretty much just doing things on their own now. So much for being afraid that they were going to make people were going to make AFK farming characters, because we're definitely in that territory now. Um, what if we can like? Oh yeah, the Thorns Necromancer sounds like absolutely insane this season too. Because not only does the needle flare aspect work on the minions now, but also they inherit 100% of your thorns. So getting 100% of the thorns from the necromancer means that you're basically all of your minions are going to have your full thorns ability, and then on top of that, you're also going to get the needle flare aspect exploding all over the place, which should be a pretty insane setup for the necromancer as well. So I mean, the necromancer's got a lot going for it this season. It's got the bone spear coming from the bone minions. It's got the new thorns build that you can potentially set up. It of course has a lot of fun going on with the summon builds in general. The shadow build has a lot of fun stuff going on. There's also the extra mini nova item. The sorceress has a tons of fun stuff too coming on. Let's go ahead and pull up the stream. I think we're getting close to the live stream. They should be getting really close to launching the live stream now. Kind of lost track of time. We were talking about so many fun stuffs. Here we go. There we go. We can pull up stream chat too, so we can see the stream chat. People are saying the tornado build seems busted. They fixed the resource on all tunes. You talking about the resource stats? The resource stat is basically across the board now. Like they changed it to just max resource. stupid spider just hanging down beside me. Little Miss Muffet sitting on a tuffet.
Season 4 is going to be the biggest update we have ever made to Diablo 4 since it has launched.
Our focus on Season 4 is to really make a lot of evergreen updates to the core systems of Diablo 4.
In Season 4, we're ramping the intensity across the seasonal and eternal realm.
I'm gonna restart the thing real quick while we're looking at this. This is just their little season reel. I'm not really too worried about it. They show it like 10,000 times.
Season 4 item changes are some of the biggest changes we've made to Diablo 4 thus far.
We've never done anything like this. We are fundamentally changing how you engage with items, how you upgrade them, and along the way solving a lot of things that we've seen continually from our community that we agree with are pain points of our existing item system right now.
So in this new itemization system, we're focusing on narrowing down the scope of the base affixes. They're going to be a lot simpler, they're going to be fewer in number, so you can much more easily parse whether this item is useful for you, and if it is, then you can take it and further upgrade it and customize it to your own specific build. Tempering is a new system that allows you to really customize the gear that you find. In order to temper, you will need to go to the blacksmith and then choose the recipe that you wish to temper from, and then a random affix from that recipe will be attached onto your gear. Tempering recipes can be found from almost all of the content throughout Sanctuaries.
So you will actually be looking for tempering recipes that go directly with what you're envisioning. Maybe you're thinking, I'm going to play a frost sorceress. There are also going to be recipes that are more generic and maybe are just generally good for the sorceress, but you'll be able to choose which one you think is going to be most powerful with the build you're making for your class. We're making a pretty radical change to the Codex of Power in this season, based again on the feedback that has been coming from our players.
Now, every single legendary in the game will be entered into your Codex of Power so that you can continually imprint the best possible version of that legendary onto your gear.
So going forward, there will no longer be carrying around all of these aspect crystals in your inventory. It's all going to be in the Codex of Power. So part of the final system that we have is going to be greater affixes. What's a greater affix? Well, we want to keep it compelling that there are some drops that are even better than the others when you're trying to get the perfect build at endgame. Because of this, in World Tier 4, and only in World Tier 4, when an ancestral legendary item drops, there's a chance the affixes on it can roll as greater affixes. These will roll with bigger values that are normally available for that affix.
Greater affixes are fairly rare, but they're not impossible to find. While leveling up, you're going to be able to find upgrades much more easily with
Thorns
this new
greater
system.
affix.
Another part of itemization is going to be masterworking. Now, this is something really intended for that very high end game, again, World Tier 4. This is where a player is going to take an item, already has the affixes that they want on it, but now they go through a process of upgrading those affixes, getting even higher values on them.
Masterworking really starts at level 100. Once you've already completed your build and found some of the best items, you're going to be able to test your build against the powerful enemies of the pit.
The Pit is a new endgame system that has been added in this season that is going to challenge players that feel that they have largely maximized their build.
By pushing into more difficult tiers of the pit, you're going to be able to unlock rarer crafting materials to masterwork your gear even further.
You're gonna have to play some of the hardest content in the game, but once you do, if you're successful, you can go and make those affixes even stronger.
In Season 4, we're ramping the intensity of the HellTides through the inclusion of a variety of new activities, the first of which is a doubling down and rise of the cultists' presence throughout the tide. You're going to be running through the HellTide, seeing the cultists just conjuring up swarms and swarms of demons, adding to that sense of manic and chaos that, they're pretty well known for. The other archetype that we're adding is the presence of the Doomsayers, who were unfortunate enough to be caught out in the tide and basically just lost their minds to all of the mania going on around them. And lastly, rounding out the new activities are just the inclusion of the Iron Wolves. They're finally joining the fight. They could no longer stand in the sidelines, seeing the HellTides and Hell's forces intensify their assault on Sanctuary. As Season 4 players engage and progress through the Call of the Wolves seasonal activity, they'll earn honor with the Iron Wolves, unlocking access to a vast assortment of rewards to accompany and empower your Season 4 journeys. In the updated HellTide, for players who are able to stay alive long enough, they'll be paid a visit by the Hellborn, former heroes of Sanctuary who have aligned with the forces of Hell to attack the allies they once aligned with. Players who are able to take down the Hellborn will be acquiring the materials they need to engage with the new premier HellTide activity, the Accursed Rituals. Located in the HellTide, these Accursed Rituals are pretty much just botched rituals from the cultists that players will be kickstarting for themselves, drawing the attention of all the nearby HellTide monsters in this kind of all-out battle. One of my favorite themes for these ambushes is the Hellworm. It's literally a giant hell slug beast that emerges from the ground and it spews out a whole bunch of mobs at you. If you're able to survive that, you'll be paid a visit from the Blood Maiden, our brand new HellTide mini-boss and one of the ultimate challenges in the new experience.
So I think I'm actually most excited about this season because of what you're able to do with your old characters, how they can integrate with this new item game and take them to new levels of power with this system.
I think that the best part of this update is that you're going to be really empowered to build the character that you want to play. You're going to be able to pick custom affixes and enhance your character in a lot of new and interesting ways.
You're so greedy. What do you want? You want some more pumpkin seeds? You want another pumpkin seed? Chonky booty boy. Here, chonky booty boy.
All right. We were just watching a video and
Literally
everyone
just finger gunning the screen for no reason.
And everyone's like, what are you doing, Adam?
Yeah, okay.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another Diablo 4 developer update live stream. My name is Adam Fletcher. I am the community director here for Diablo. I'm joined by this wonderful panel, plus an additional head, which we will call out. But
We only have 4 seats, so we have to swap people
so
around as we go.
We have to do the same thing we did during the PTR stream, which was like we swapped out like Joe Shelley and I put in Adam Jackson.
That's true, we did do
and
that.
So we're gonna play more magic tricks today. But do you guys want to do a quick intro to yourself to the wonderful Diablo community?
Sure, I'm Joe Pipora. I'm the associate game director for Diablo 4.
And I'm Adam Jackson, the lead live class designer for Diablo 4.
And we have a new face.
What's up, charming person?
I'm Colin Feiner. I'm the lead live game designer.
Awesome. And then we're actually going to be joined by
Who are you?
Derek.
Who are you?
Well, I already introduced myself.
Oh,
you just
sorry.
missed it because
I'm already screwing this up, everybody.
This is Dusty Bones. He's a
We
chinchilla.
actually have Derek who will be joining us as well. Derek, you just saw in the video prior talking about Season 4. He'll be swapping in to talk a little bit more about HellTides later in this. But big stream here. We have Season 4 coming up. As you guys saw earlier this week, it is Loot Reborn for Season 4. And a lot of players actually got to experience it a couple weeks ago with PTR. PTR, this was our first Diablo 4 PTR. It was a massive undertaking from the team here, but it was really, really great to have players jump in early, check out Season 4 and all the changes, and actually provide feedback. And so we have a lot to cover today based off of feedback that we received from players from PTR itself. So, but Joe, I know you wanted to jump into kind of talking a little bit more about Season 4, how PTR went, before we jump into all the changes.
Yeah, happy to. So, okay, so last time we were on stream, we were actually talking about a lot of the changes that players are going to get a chance to check out on the PTR. So we think that went really, really well. It was even just having the week of time for players to like just jump in and just crush through all of the content, check out all of the new features, and get a lot of feedback, find a lot of bugs on the way as well. Was again super valuable. It's been really, really great for the team. We'll take a lot of this feedback, look at the tuning variety of features, and really make sure that we've got the best version of the Season 4 experience ready when we get into the launch state. So in terms of like our big takeaways, first of all, really, really valuable across the board. Season 4, Season Loot Reborn was, as I mentioned during the PTR stream originally, was really our opportunity to go back and take a lot of the feedback in that we've been looking at since the launch of the game from 2023.
This art is so good.
Yeah,
Just
no,
wanted to call that
I
out.
do love the key art for this. This key art for season 3 was awesome
It's
as well.
awesome.
Yeah. So so looking back at the thanks for disrupting my flow.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, yeah,
David
thanks,
art
Mike.
is amazing.
So yeah, like, looking back at the launch of the product in 2023, we've been getting a lot of really good feedback. You'll remember back in season 2, Season of Blood, we made a big change to like vulnerable damage and like the multiplicative damage that comes along with it. We made a change to the way the elemental resist worked.
Yep.
And there were a lot of things we had to do to make those changes like really shine through. There's like a lot of Paragon nodes that had to get updated. There were a lot of like legendary aspects that had to get changed. There was just a lot of itemization stuff in the background that we had to do to make those systems work better and lift up other things around them, like overpower, for example, to make that feel like it was in a better spot. So now that we're looking at like even when we were done that one big release for Season of Blood, we knew that there was a lot more that we wanted to do. Again, that we've been thinking about. But there's a lot of work we need to do, like make sure that all of these things really all fit together cohesively. So, I mean, as people got a chance to see on the PTR, like the introduction of things like the tempering feature, which we're going to talk a little bit more in a minute. We get to like introduce these new like affixes into items, and affixes you can't get on items anymore. The reduction affix count on items overall, so it's a lot easier to go and sort through 25 pairs of gloves in your inventory at any given time, where you don't really have those same situations. We reduced the number of items that drop in the game experience overall, but made sure that the items that are dropping are just more valuable and more likely to be upgrades for you, or something you could kind of like build into an upgrade. We introduced the masterworking feature, right? And Colin helped head a lot of these things up, right, during working with the teams. So they introduced the masterworking feature where players can continually upgrade items and increase the value of the affixes, and then at ranks 4 and 8 and 12, you get to like kind of crit on one of these and make them even better. There's a lot of things that were introduced. We added a new content type in the form of the Pit the Artificer. It's like this new extremely deep and deadly dungeon dive players get to go into once they get into the like towards the end game, when you're getting to 85, 90 for your character level. You're starting to kind of dip into that space, and that's where you go to get your masterworking materials, which feels really, really good. And we learned a lot of really great lessons from like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3, because we think there was some really cool content there. So there's some really, really fun things there. And then
also the Codex of Power updates. You no longer have to save all your legendaries all the time.
Codex of Power updates, which I was to be fair, I've been so excited about the Codex of Power updates. I've been teasing it for like 6 live streams. I feel like it's just not like before BlizzCon. I feel like I teased it at the end of a live stream. So it's just what it is. But again, super excited about the Codex of Power changes. That is very transformational. Like now, when Legendary drops on the ground for you, you just salvage it, you get that aspect, put it into your Codex, add the roll that you got, and you just get to use it in perpetuity. And we actually have some fun ways, we'll talk about later, how we're playing with that a little bit as we go. So, I mean, all of this stuff and more, we made huge changes to HellTide. I know Derek's we talked about in a little while, as he helped lead the team that did a lot of the work for that. And we got to introduce the season theme in the form of like Loot Reborn, and then the reintroduction of the Iron Wolves mercenaries the players be working with during the course of the release. I know that we showed a little bit of that off earlier. And I'm just really, really excited about the release overall, as this was an opportunity for us to work with like not just the season team, but also the live team, and like lots of support from the systems groups. And there's a lot of things being done for the expansion that's coming out eventually as well, like Vessel of Hatred. So being able to like really organize teams and make sure that we're in a really, really good spot to like provide this really big update for the game has been very, very exciting. And the feedback, going back to the feedback from PTR was, again, really, really valuable. It was great to get players in there and to get those things taken care of. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. I know that some of this information has been like, we talked to like a few like press outlets, we talked to a few different people, and like some information is getting out there. But I want to make sure we can provide a little bit more detail, because I know this is the audience that wants to know like the real specifics. We're going to get into it, right? Yeah. And we'll also have our Q&A as we usually do at the end, where we can get answer some more questions the community might have as we kind of go through the whole thing. So yeah, that was at a high level, that's what we're feeling about the PTR, feeling pretty good about it. I'm happy to like maybe jump into itemization, or how do we want to go?
Yeah, I think the first thing we probably want to talk about is like the itemization changes that are in season 4 that people experience, which includes like the tempering, the masterworking stuff that changed in season 4, and of course all the feedback that we got from both tempering, masterworking, and what we are planning on doing based off of that PTR feedback for the launch of season 4.
Yeah, we have quite a few updates.
Yeah,
so.
lots.
Yeah, sure. So I guess just starting off then with like high level itemization. Like let's go back to like some of the goals that we had when we started like down on this. Started some of the work for.
Oh my God, he said damage on Mondays because that's how long cooldowns last.
Having an easier time comparing items in their inventory. It's actually one of the first things we started thinking about when we began discussing what we thought needed to change about itemization, because the experience in Season 3 and Season 2 and other seasons has really been like the player, you'll get into like the, you're running your high tier nightmare dungeons, you're getting lots of drops, you're sorting through all of this stuff. Like you'll have like items that are like, this is like a 904 eye power sword, and this is a 909 eye
What the hell's going on?
power sword. Now I've got like 6 helmets at all, or have a wide variety of affixes on them. We really wanted to, again, just to quickly hit this, we wanted to make sure that we had a lower number of affixes overall that could roll on different item slots, but those affixes were more like generically useful and stuff that you could really build around, as opposed to having lots of really conditional affixes going back to like the the damage on Tuesdays joke, like that's like,
the shirt that
we
Mr.
literally wearing it now.
Literally
Huge proponent. It's always funny. So it's obviously because it's a joke, right? Oh, jokes are always funny. But the truth is, like, we want to make sure that where we want to have conditional affixes in the game, we want to find places players would be able to opt into them in a very specific way. So initially, want items that you're really dropping for you to have more generic utility, just more valuable for you overall, and also as a result of this, make it easier to compare those items. Yeah. So one of the changes that we made is we actually reduced the number of affixes that can naturally roll on item slots. So like now, like a rare item can roll like 2 affixes, a legendary item can roll 3 affixes, but then later on, there's other systems you get to introduce. We'll talk about in a bit. It lets you introduce more of those. Yeah. And we did that, so it's just easier to go through things.
We also made all items post level 100 925, so you're no longer comparing like the designer number that's like 904 to 925. You're just focusing on what's cool about the item, which is the affixes.
Yeah, which is super important, because there's a lot of situations where like if you're level 100, like Blood Harvest might be a lot of fun, but Blood Harvest is still dropping like eye power 900 items for you, and at that point, why would you want to keep even Blood Harvest, which players really love? Like, why would you want to keep engaging with it if you can't get really good endgame items format? Yeah. So now when you're like at level 100 and you're playing in HellTide, or if you're going through Nightmare Dungeons at like a regular, like a slightly lower tier, and you're fighting level 100 monsters or higher, you're always getting eye power 925 items. They might not have all exactly the stats or exactly the rolls that you want, but you're always getting stuff you could actually potentially use.
Yeah, a lot of the things feel a lot better too, like gambling, right? Like now gambling is actually a really great source for targeting item slot, because all of those are 925 at level 100.
That's right. So like the obols that you've been sitting on, where you go and you just churn through a whole bunch of these at once, they didn't have as much generic value. Now they're a lot better, because you really can just like say, I am looking for a helmet, I am looking for a ring, and you can just go roll 10 eye power 925 rings in a row, and you have stuff to play with then at that point. So yeah, those were some of the high level changes we wanted to make with items, with regards to like making it easier to compare these things. Codex hits a lot of the inventory concerns that we'd have. We made changes to gems in previous seasons, so we didn't have as many of them clogging up your inventory as well. So we thought that was really, really good stuff. But then we knew that we wanted to make sure that that it wasn't just about we weren't going to like add another tier of eye power to items. That wasn't the way to make itemization more interesting for players and rewards more interesting. One of the core things that we really want to focus around was the idea that like items have a journey. The best items have a journey, right? So when you get a really good item, it's about what the potential of that item is. What you can do with this item to make it really superior, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's sort of to jump into tempering. One of the first features we had in terms of taking your item on a journey was this idea that we wanted hundreds of different affixes, and each one spoke differently to a build. We wanted you to be able to play sort of whatever class fantasy or build fantasy you had in mind, and manifest that through customization of your items. So we actually have some video, I think, of what the tempering feature looks like, and I can talk through some of the updates we've made from the PTR. So here you have, we're adding an offensive affix to the item. It's going to land on increased corpse explosion damage. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool, especially if you really like corpse explosion. We've added a skip button, so you can skip through the flow if you really want to blast through this. We also have a results screen now that shows you exactly what affix it landed on and what the roll range was. And then we have some more exciting.
Is their stream laggy, or like what the hell's going on?
Affixes that you're going to see here, for example, chance to cast Bone Spear projectiles twice, which I know, Adam, is your favorite, because
I love more projectiles.
The balance bomb.
Don't say it like that. Everyone loves projectiles. Great. It is cool though. like being able to like.
Derek is here. So yeah, we did our swap. But Joe's still going to be here off screen.
This stream is really laggy. I don't know what's going on with this stream.
We just want to make sure that Derek appears here. Derek is our lead seasons designer, so he'll be talking a little bit more about HellTides later. Sorry to interject. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Now I'm off screen. So yeah, I think one of the really cool things about the tempering system in general.
Maybe I should refresh.
Is that like the manuals that were
Let me try
introducing
refreshing
initially are just like the beginning of what we can do with tempering. It's opportunities to make like really weird and interesting new affixes.
Talk us through a little bit about what masterworking is, and of course the changes as well that we're going to be seeing based off of PTR feedback.
Sure, yeah. So, the next step in your item's journey is to really take it to new heights. You've customized it, you found some base affixes you're really into, and we wanted to give you a way to essentially take some of these affixes to new levels. So you think about helms and CDR or cooldown reduction, or for example, that chance to replicate, your bone spear. We want you to be able to really juice those stats. So I think we have a video here of what that looks like. Overall, what we've really done is taken a look at the feedback. We got a bunch of feedback that it was tedious to upgrade these over and over. So we've removed the animation from ranks 1 through 3. We've kept the critical, upgrade. We have the animation still there, but you can skip it. Again, sort of in the spirit of blasting across everything that we do. So you can do that very quickly. Another piece of feedback that we got was that part of the masterworking process allows you to reset this. And why do you want to reset this? It's because you want to hit that specific affix you're looking for. You want to juice a specific affix. And sometimes you might miss, right?
Juice.
Which means
juice it, boys. Juice it.
So part of the resetting sort of requires you to get lower tier materials. You're going to get these from the pit. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, we saw a bunch of feedback that it was really tedious to create like 1,000 caches and open up them in town like 100 times, right? It's super annoying. The town is lava. We want to address that. So, we've added multiple scales of material conversion to those caches. This is a short-term solution. We have something in the future planned. It's just not ready yet. So, while it's not the perfect solution, it does get you there a little bit quicker. There's multiple conversion rates of materials, so you can turn, one legendary material into a much higher count of materials based on the tiers that we have in that crafting system. So, again, not the perfect solution. We have something coming in a future update.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, a lot of changes coming for masterworking based off of feedback. Masterworking, of course, being a brand new kind of that end tail of that item journey that you'll have even after tempering and stuff like that. So
I'll say another thing that was brought up as feedback was about veiled crystals, right? Didn't we reduce the amount that you need for crafting?
We did, and I can totally talk about some of the stuff we've done just overall on itemization. Veiled crystals is one of those things. So I'll talk about, first I want to touch on rare and magic items. That was something we made a change from Season 3 and Season 4. Legendary items are just generally straight up better than rare items now. And part of our goal there is really to ensure that players aren't sifting through sand, looking through thousands of items. We want to just call it out, like legendary items are legendary. At the same time, we acknowledge that there is some coolness to knowing that certain magic and rare items could have value to you, right? We don't have anything for Season 4 yet, but the design team is definitely talking about ways that we can bring this rarity back in a way that doesn't diminish our overall goal of trying to reduce that sort of sifting through sand feeling, right? So in the meantime, they can be salvaged. They still have a use in the end game. But we heard a ton of feedback, to your point, Adam, on the veiled crystals. It's just like such a bottleneck, and it's like, God damn it, I have to pick a bunch of yellow items up to do any of the cool crafting features. What the hell, Blizzard?
That's an actual player quote too.
I'm very sure it was.
So what we've done is we've made it so that legendaries break down into equal amounts of veiled crystals, so you can just not pick up yellow items. It's just a bonus now. We've also made sacred and ancestral items break down into 2 and 3 amounts of salvage. So sacred items will break down into double, ancestral will break down into triple. So we're effectively tripling the output of a lot of the salvage here.
And I know, that was probably the most vocal feedback that we got from players. About,
maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I need more veiled crystals. So I know that changes coming for that in Season 4 based off that PTR feedback. Another, probably maybe the second, maybe also the first topmost, our largest feedback piece that we got is around greater affixes and the visibility related to those. So there are changes going into that for Season 4. So, Colin, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we wanted, the dopamine. That was a big goal also of part of itemization, is just like seeing an item hit the ground and just being like, oh, I like that jackpot moment, right?
So that's really important.
So we actually have some video here to show of what that actually looks like on the ground. So you can see, here's the weirdly long named item with the greater affix. Yeah, right.
Unyielding commander's sacrificial sickle.
I know, right? So we have a 1 greater affix star. It'll go up to 3 or 4 if it's a unique item, which always feels incredible. So it shows up on the ground when it lands. And then if we can go to the next video, we actually have an indicator now when it is in the inventory.
Yeah, so you can see it.
Saturated right.
I asked this as a joke, and it looks so good. I'm so happy.
I'm disappointed. I can't see like the pixels. It's not zoomed in. So that's been enormously helpful, and really, when you kill like Duriel or one of these tormented bosses, and they drop a ton of loot on the ground, to see some of these have stars on them, it just is a feel great moment.
Yeah, kind of goes with the whole like. Not sifting through the sands. You clearly see that icon. You know that has value to you.
You want to know what's valuable.
Exactly. Especially, and again, even on the icon itself, like in your inventory, you'll immediately know those are my greater affix items. And long gone are the days of the Roman numeral. We
you don't like the designer solution.
We will. It's funny. I think internally we knew like, oh, that's probably going to get changed. we had a few jokes about that. But I know
one thing I want to touch on real quick before I move on the itemization, if that's okay, is we actually, to touch on the veiled crystals, I think players are going to want to know this, is we reduced the imprinting cost of aspects quite a bit. So that's really going to help the veiled crystals as well. I think it went from like 75 veiled crystals to imprint on an ancestral armor to 16. So it's a pretty huge swing. Just getting way more of your aspects on gear. It's a lot more flexible.
We really want people to feel like, this is kind of the Codex of Power updates in general, which I'm really pumped about, is we want you to feel like you're able to re-imprint those aspects and that it's something that you're not having a huge cost and huge barriers to doing, right? Because as you upgrade your gear, that should be part of your process, is like putting on their favorite affixes.
Yeah, so. A lot of changes coming with tempering, masterworking, itemization, and I know, did we have any other changes that you wanted to cover before we move on to the next section? I know Colin's got this novel in front of him, and he's like, what am I going to do?
He was a keeper of a lot of our changes. Oh, one I would think is worth mentioning, Colin, you may want to talk about, is the masterworking. I remember we got a lot of feedback about the fail chance.
Oh, that's a great point.
True. The fail chance we took. Funny enough, that was like probably the biggest thing changed.
That was the first bullet, and I somehow missed it. So we definitely felt like there's a ton of feedback that the double random chance was just a little bit too much, and we agreed, so we just took it out. It's just fun now. Just upgrade the item. We adjusted the material costs a bit, but the fail chance is no longer there.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Colin, for going through those changes. We'll actually be back to Colin here later because he still has more to talk about from his novel papers that he has
Joe, you want to swap
prepared. We did want to jump into some of the class balance changes that are coming after PTR. Of course, with Season 4, we have a lot of class balance changes that are on top of all these itemization changes. And we got a lot of great feedback from players. So, Mr. Adam Jackson.
Very much did. Yeah.
Let's run through these.
Yeah, so basically...
The classic Adam Jackson slides.
Yes, I love my slides. We have kind of 3 categories of things that I'm going to be talking about today. Again, thanks to everybody for playing on the PTR. We did get a ton of feedback. I'm not going to go over the specifics of everything that changed, but I'm going to go over kind of the categories of things just because there's a whole lot of changes. One of the first big ones was endgame survivability issues. So this is kind of talking about those people that went really far into the pit, and this is kind of something that's been happening on live as well that we wanted to address. And there's this phenomenon when you get really deep into the game and you're fighting high-level monsters where, you'll hit a point where the monsters are kind of easy and you're able to blow through with your really powerful builds, and then you kind of get to a point where they start one-shotting you. And it can be kind of mysterious and hard to understand, like, what's going on, why did this happen?
We were talking about
We've also had some issues balancing that kind of top-end survivability when you get to those hard monsters in the game, One of the reasons for this is that variability in player defensiveness has been really high traditionally. This is why when you look at the new items in the game in Season 4, you don't see a damage reduction very much at all. It's a very premium stat now that's really hard to get, and it's to help solve this problem of when someone is stacking all damage reduction versus someone who has none of it, their difference in effective health and survivability is really, really high, and so it makes it hard to balance the game. Another part that we wanted to hit was really armor. That armor is kind of a really confusing stat. It's not really well understood how it works, and I'm going to be going over in a little bit how it works and what we're changing to kind of address both of these issues a little bit. Next is that some stats can get really high. We added all these crazy awesome stats, and you can juice them with masterworking and crit them and all these things. And it allowed for some really crazy things on the PTR, which people love to post constantly at me. And to be clear, we like crazy things. It's awesome to get powerful and have that fantasy. We do have to take into account things like combat clarity and computer performance to make sure that the game can still run very well for everybody. So we made some changes there to address that.
You mean it's not fun to just not see the screen or the ground?
I think it is for a little while. It is hilarious, I think.
Yeah, it's funny for a bit, but when you can only see patches of ground occasionally.
And when one player can do that, let alone when you get 4 of them in a group, I think it's great. And last but not least, balance changes and bug fixes. I'll be going over some of them, but there's way more than what I'm covering right now today. But just know, we took a lot of feedback on balance, a lot of feedback on bugs. There were a lot of them that were reported, and we acted on a lot of them, and I'll give an example of some that we did. All right, so let's go into armor. So, brief history lesson or description of how armor works today. This is when you log in, how armor is functioning. It's your stat for physical damage mitigation. So you know how you have your elemental resistance that caps at 75 and then can get pushed up a little bit. Armor reduces your physical resistance up to a cap of 85%. It can't go higher than that. That's the number. But what's confusing is the amount of armor that you need to get to that 85% cap is actually based on the level of the monster that you're fighting. And I gave some examples here. These are the actual numbers in the game. So if you have a level 50 monster that's hitting you, whacking you, then you need 5,265 armor, and then you'll be at that 85% cap. But then at level 100, at every level, 51, 52, 53, that number is going up of what you need. And at level 100, it's about 9,230. And then at level 150 monster, it gets close to 13,000, right? And so what this ends up, kind of creating is that the player really never knows when they're done with armor, right? That number can scale up forever. It's kind of a hidden system under the hood. So when you're fighting these monsters and they get way higher level than you as you scale into the pit or nightmare dungeons or whatever, you don't really know how much you need. And so this is kind of really contributing to that phenomenon where you're fine, you're at the cap, and then the higher level monsters just start one-shotting you. So in Season 4, a lot of it's going to be the same as Season 3. It's still going to be your source of physical damage mitigation. The cap is still going to be 85%. And you're still going to need escalating amounts of armor as the monster level gets higher. But what we're changing here, if we go forward a little bit, is that armor is now going to cap at that level 100 monster number. So that 9,230, you can write down this number. We're also going to later get into the tooltip. We couldn't get it in for the launch of Season 4, but we'll have it soon after. But it's kind of going to be like elemental resistance, where you get to this number, and then you're kind of done with the system, right? So armor is just another thing on your checkbox of things you want to do as far as defensive survivability. And once you get it, you're done. You can get it from gear, legendary aspects, and so on. Particularly in Season 4, I think this will be a little bit of an easy number to hit. We're not trying to make this super difficult or hard to do. It'll be very achievable for you when you're a level 100 player. So here we have a zoom in on the tooltip so you can see this player has, way above that 9,000 amount of armor that they need. They have close to 16,000. But you can see there, that it's capped out at that 85% physical resistance. And again, soon after the launch of Season 4, we're going to actually put the cap that you need of the number that you're chasing. Because we want you to know what the goal is that you're trying to hit.
So that means they have a lot of room for optimization, right?
Correct, yeah. This means that this player can actually give up armor on some of their, tempering or item affixes and look for other stats. That's kind of the point. So next, stat caps. So, now that we've introduced a lot of ways to get really high amounts of stats in the game, we want to kind of control for visual clarity, what a player can put onto their screen. So kind of similar to some caps we have already in the game, like attack speed or elemental resistance, we're putting some caps on cooldown reduction and the increased area size. You know, like, it's really fun to get those giant frost novas that cover the screen, but when it goes like 2 or 3 screens away, it can get really noisy and messy. So we still want these stats to be really powerful and impactful, but just control a little bit the amount of insanity that they can bring. And one thing on this cooldown reduction cap, to be clear, this is not just CDR across the entire game. This is just capping what you can get from gear. So this is like the base cooldown reduction you get when you first cast a skill, what it's going to be. You can still get cooldown resets or additional cooldown effects from things like the skill tree or legendary powers that just reduce the cooldown of your skills as you do certain mechanics. This is just like the baseline cap that comes from your gear.
I think when we looked at the cap for area effect too, we tested it on Frost Nova, and we were like pretty meticulous on what that cap should be, and it was still massive.
No, it's huge. Yeah. When I say like we're making a cap, you're still going to get to insanity when it comes to what's on your screen. It's still going to be awesome. So you can see here, this is just showing you what the tooltip looks like now. So we're going to be showing you, you know, as a player, what those caps are, so you know, when you're evaluating your gear and on your tooltips, what it is. And then same thing here. You can see here, like the dust level area effect size bonus, it caps at 100%. Next, balance updates. So again, like I mentioned before, we made a lot of balance changes based on feedback. Again, thank you for playing and giving us all that feedback. I'm going to go over some of the things. One of the bigger categories of things was, again, like I mentioned, those changes due to combat readability and balancing player power. A few examples here of things that we're reducing are like the amount of dust levels that can be on your screen, and Fractured Winter Glass, one of my new favorite uniques we're bringing in. The amount of frozen orbs that could span the screen is going to be reduced a bit, so I want to prepare you all for that. Again, to be clear, you're still going to spawn a whole lot. It's just not going to be like insane amounts where you can't see things anymore. They're still going to be very powerful. I'm even going to show a video a little bit later of kind of the difference of PTR to what's going to ship in the game. Some other things, though, that we're doing, Fortify. We wanted to increase the amount of damage reduction that you get. This is just Fortify across the board, the base mechanic. That DR is going from 10 to 15%. And this was because before, when it was at 10%, we had to take into account that players could get damage reduction from a million different sources throughout the game. Now that it's more rare and more premium, we can actually make this mechanic in the game a little bit more impactful and feel like you're a tankier player for opting into this, these kinds of builds. We also made a lot of tempering affix updates. I'm not going to go into detail them, but just know like what you saw in PTR and what's going to ship, you're going to see a lot of improvements, a lot of balance changes, even some shuffling around of the affixes to make them in ways that make more sense. Based on feedback. And then we did do some class changes as well. I'm only going to give very few examples here, but just know that there were quite a few. One is Druid players. Companion Druid players always harass me. They want that build to work, and I agree. It's really cool. So we increased the health of Druid wolves by 200%, and we also reduced the respawn rate and cut it in half. So, we got feedback basically that, their companions were really good and fun and did damage, but in the late game, they just kind of died and couldn't survive. So we're doing this to kind of address that feedback. All right, so here's dust levels as an example. So you can see on the left, this is just one barbarian by themselves, the amount of dust levels that they could produce, right? And then on the right, you can see kind of the same barbarian. You can see like the dust levels around the areas where the enemies are, they're still getting hit by a ton of them, but it's not covering the entire screen, right? And especially when you get like 3, 4, many players together, it really becomes insanity.
Yeah, especially when you're in a party of 4 barbs or, it's just like everyone's a barb and I don't know where I'm walking.
Yeah, and other classes do that kind of thing too, not just barb, but this was kind of a good example. So, this is kind of seeing the difference between PTR and live.
Although, to be honest, they don't really have the most ridiculous version.
This is another one of our new uniques that rogue players gave us a lot of feedback on. So a quick summary of how this unique works is it kind of changes your rapid fire skill from shooting straight and hitting a single enemy into kind of a mortar skill where you shoot up into the air and then your arrows fall on the ground and explode. It's really, really cool, but one of the pieces of feedback we got was that when you launched the arrows, they would kind of go in a line and they wouldn't all hit the same enemy anymore. So if you were trying to do single target damage, it could actually be a nerf unless you like walked right up to the enemies and shotgunned them. And while there was a way to play around it, players weren't really happy that we transformed the skill so much that it went from a ranged skill to kind of a melee skill. So we made an update here, and we have a video of the before and after. But basically, you can see on the PTR on the left here how it goes in a big line, and then the player has to run right next to the target dummy to do the full damage to it. And on the right now, you'll see basically you target where those arrows are going to drop, and they just all go to that area. So you can hit a single enemy, but you'll also hit all the enemies around it because the arrows explode. So it should be a lot more usable compared to before.
Can Scoundrel's Kiss ricochet with my rapid fire?
I'm pretty sure, yes, it can. So it does all the things and inherits all the things that your rapid fire does.
That's
so
very cool.
It's gonna be
But
pretty
can
cool.
it double projectile?
I'm pretty sure it can, just like everything else. Yes.
Yes.
Spam everywhere.
Yes.
We love spam. And last but not least, bug fixes. Like I mentioned before, there were a whole lot of bug fixes reported to us. Thank you all for getting them. We addressed pretty much every single one that was reported. I'm giving some examples here, but again, we got a lot more than what I'm showing on the screen. One was Druid's Hurricane was incorrectly scaling damage basically infinitely, so we fixed that. Ebon Piercer, the extra missiles from our new unique, they incorrectly had 100% lucky hit chance, which is proccing a lot of crazy stuff. And then Flame Weaver, another one of the new things we introduced to the game. It's basically an effect where you can put a firewall on the ground and then you shoot firebolts through it and it'll split the firebolts. Really cool fantasy. But what happened in the PTR was you could stack a bunch of firewalls right on top of each other and they would split the firebolts multiplicatively and add more and more, way more than intended. So you could fire a ridiculous number of firebolts, which were crashing servers and things. So it wasn't great. But now we fixed that so it'll work properly.
Crash them servers.
And again, we're still discovering and working on other fixes. There were a lot more that went in. If you reported it, it was very likely fixed. So basically, the build will be in a much better, stable state once we launch. And that's really due to all your feedback, so thanks again.
Which is the entire purpose of a PTR.
That's my section. So.
That's the whole purpose of PTR.
Class balance feedback we got from PTR was really, really great. You know, we were able to make so many different changes there, of course. Some of the biggest ones, like the readability stuff that we probably seen the initial videos of, like the dust devils everywhere, was crazy. Also being in a party with I was playing PTR and being in a party with like two barbs and like another like necromancer. I was like, oh okay, like what's going on right now?
PTR is one of those things you get to see things in development state. I will say these kinds of things are actually pretty common when we're developing anything. Is being able to create these crazy situations, and we have to fix it for the game before it goes live. So, that's kind of the advantage of PTR is players can find these things.
Exactly.
There's a lot more manpower being put into it.
PTR was super great for us to have, and thanks again to the community for the feedback on all the class balance changes, and thanks Adam for walking us through that.
Yeah.
The next thing we do want to talk about is with Derek over here. Derek is actually going to talk a little bit about, of course, all the immense HellTide changes. Probably one of the most popular features and changes that we've introduced in Season 4 with PTR and people being able to experience it. Of course, we got feedback based off of players jumping into HellTide, and we do want to go through all that with Derek. And then we also want to talk a little bit about the season itself with Derek. So, Derek, want to jump in?
Yeah, just a few things to cover. So as you mentioned, the players who joined us when the PTR or caught all the various like blog and video posts and whatnot know that with Season 4, we're introducing permanent upgrades to the HellTide experience. Heavy focus on improving and enhancing, I guess, monster density and activity variety. So there's a ton more things to do in the HellTides, and as a result, there's just a ton more monsters to mow through in the HellTides. There's also some explorations, and just to double back real quick, these are all permanent across both the seasonal and eternal realms, so they're not going away once Season 4 ends. This is just how HellTide works.
Part of the game.
Yep.
Kind of like our item updates too, right?
Yeah, now and forever.
This is the new world we live in.
Yeah, this is Sanctuary. But there's also, if you kind of look at the top right of the screen, the threat system. So the longer you're fighting in the tides, you're going to be accumulating threat, which just results in even more monsters ambushing you at higher frequencies than monster packs. I think the personal favorite, and think fan favorite, is the Hellworm. This giant demon slug bug that just pops out from the ground and just vomits monsters all over you. But kind of with all those, the seasons, as we say a lot, are an amazing opportunity for experimentation. And sometimes the best results of those experimentations are when they can inspire permanent upgrades and just enhancements to the base game as a whole. So that's where the Hellborn and the new Accursed Ritual and Blood Maiden come into play as part of the new HellTide experience. Look at those. Those look rad. So the Hellborn, as our Season 2 players might recall, we introduced the Bloodseekers. And those were really cool monsters based on class archetypes. So you're kind of like fighting vampiric shadow versions of yourself. And we take a look at that content, and we just love it from the team perspective, and just find hey, we're upgrading the HellTides. This is a perfect piece of content to just include with it. So that's where the Hellborn came into play. You know, they're fallen heroes of Sanctuary. They've been overtaken by the corruption from Hell and, you know, kind of turned against you. Kind of in line with that, the Accursed Ritual and the Blood Maiden. In Season 2, with the Bloodlures and the Bloodseekers, we introduced this concept of, I guess, calling it just like open world social boss summoning. We followed up with like the, there's a buzz right there.
Yeah, it's very catchy.
Rolls right off the tongue. I love it.
I get into my designer speak sometimes, but and we followed that up with like the Malphite spawners in Season 3. Yep. And again, looking at these really successful experimentations from previous seasons, we love opportunities to bring players together and just add that extra layer to the HellTide experience. So that's where the Accursed Ritual comes into play. So as you're out fighting against the tides, you'll be collecting the new material, the Baneful Hearts, that you can bring to the Accursed Ritual. It takes 3 to summon up the Blood Maiden. And you can do this, you know, by yourself, or you can partner up with some buddies and all, I guess, contribute to the summoning together. And, you know, the Blood Maiden itself is our new HellTide mini-boss. That she's immensely powerful, but also very, very lucrative. And I think the last thing forgot to mention is that this is all expanding into World Tiers 1 and 2 as well. And kind of like a distilled, not diluted. So the HellTide in World Tier 1 and 2 is more specifically tuned to, you know, I guess like meet the leveling needs, or the needs of the leveling player.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, on the Blood Maiden, I remember you had talked about with me before that the people that summon the Blood Maiden actually get bonus loot drops, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can either contribute just by yourself to the Blood Maiden and get some extra loot for, you know, your troubles. We want to, you know, make sure that we give you a little bit extra because you're sacrificing up your hearts. But also, every player that it doesn't stack, so you're not, you know, stressed to say, hey, I just need to be the one that summons them all. We can all party up and just deposit our own Baneful Hearts and, I guess, reap the benefits of that.
Yeah. Right. To be clear, so if you put in all 3, you get bonus loot, right?
Correct.
But like you, me, and Colin are in a group, and like I put in 2 and you put in 1, do I get more loot than you?
No. So you get the same amount of loot. So, you know, if Colin has a Baneful Heart to deposit, if we all, you know, dump them in together, then we all get the shared benefits of that.
Got it.
But I will touch on a bit later the PTR updates and just some of the enhanced value that the Blood Maiden received since PTR for both contributors and non-contributors to the summon.
Awesome. Yeah, so a lot of new stuff coming in for HellTide, and this is all part of the stuff that players got to experience in the PTR. And of course, we got learnings from the PTR, as you just mentioned.
Many.
Do you want to walk us through some of the changes that are coming in with HellTide for all the PTR feedback that we had?
Yeah, I think I have a PowerPoint on my own.
Ooh,
see, there you go. Look at that.
Fancy.
Yeah, so, you know, as mentioned, tons of sweeping changes going into the HellTides and just overall balance of the game in general with Season 4. And kind of with that, sometimes, you know, we push a little bit too far in some regards. So we did get feedback and also just own internal kind of fill checks on the Cinder drop rates were feeling a bit slow in the PTR. So we just went back, reviewed it, and gathered our feedback and just iterated on the drop percentage to hit closer to the expectations of how much we want to be collecting the cinders and interacting with the tortured gifts. So I think we're in a much better spot. I know we're in a much better spot right now, actually. So that was one of the first major pieces coming out from the PTR.
A lot more chests from this, yeah?
Yeah, chests, more loot, more fun.
Awesome.
Let's see, next one. Yeah, so on the topic of more is more fun, the Baneful Hearts, we were noticing that they were dropping a bit inconsistently. So you can get the Baneful Hearts from opening tortured gifts, killing the Hellborn, and one of the Doomsayer variants, one of our new activity types. But again, we want to get the Baneful Hearts in the hands of the players with a pretty, you know, steady cadence. So we noticed with the PTR that we're just not getting them as frequently as we wanted to. So we just went back, iterated, and kind of reviewed our bad luck protection to just ensure that we improve the consistency that Baneful Hearts are dropping. And this is all kind of like, the Blood Maiden is not meant to be seen as like this, you know, highly ambitious piece of content that you only engage with like once every 50 levels. We want you getting the hearts. We want you engaging with the social boss summoning mechanic. And, you know, I think it just adds an extra layer to the HellTide we want you to engage with. And on the topic of the Blood Maiden, overall, like we touched on earlier, the Blood Maiden is just seeing some overall rewards improvements. So, as noticed, or as mentioned before, if you contribute to the summon of the Blood Maiden, you receive a bonus reward. But one of the things was that you couldn't really tell. There is a little icon that appears like where your buff bar, but the effects of that was largely unnoticed from both the team and actually just the PTR players themselves. So again, taking this opportunity to just review the overall value of the Blood Maiden for contributors and non-contributors alike, because again, we wanted to make sure that she has a clear role in the HellTide experience. So again, overall, Blood Maiden is just overall more valuable. With this, we're dropping things like legendaries, Forgotten Soul, lore Zermats, and a % chance for contributors at the end world tiers to get some end game boss materials as well.
Yeah, so this is now like an additional opportunity for players to get additional of the boss mats for the boss ladders. Which we've heard a lot about how players were like, hey, we only really have one kind of method to get them, and we wanted to expand that and bring that into more avenues so players didn't have to just kind of be like tunneled off into one area to get like specific boss mats, which is cool.
Yeah, variety is the spice of life.
Yes.
I like that the contribution encourages you to actually use these. In Season 2, I'd just chain summon the boss over and over and over, and there would be this awkward dance where someone would show up, and it's like, I know you have
the waiting game. Like,
use your material.
Yeah, and that's why it's really also important that the nuance is honestly lost pretty frequently when we're talking about like drops for different kinds of creatures in different sorts of situations like this. Like Treasure Goblin, we talked about Treasure Goblin a while ago, a few seasons ago, and I rememur I put a poll out on X.com.
So
at one point, basically, I put a poll out basically asking players what they believed the legendary drop rate of Treasure Goblins to be, and I had a whole bunch of options, and I think like 85% of the players were wrong. And because the drop rate at that time was 50%, players didn't feel it because they didn't see the Treasure Goblin enough to really notice that it was actually that high. So I think making sure that like we're like buffing up those moments where like if I have my contribution bonus a little bit higher, that helps make sure that is felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what's funny is Joe talking off screen and we're all looking off and people are just staring us stare into this random corner and stuff. You know what would be funny is if we all just actually looked back there at Bale. We should play every
time.
Yeah, every time. And then like Joe's turned into Bale. Oh,
literally coming in the corner.
That's awkward.
That wasn't part of the plan.
I like the deep shadows.
That's where he is.
I guess the moments when I decide to say something, maybe they'll occasionally become.
He's like, we have another camera. Awesome. Cool. So a lot of HellTide changes that we have coming into.
Yeah, I think there's actually one more slide.
I'm pretty sure we have one more.
So one thing that we've kind of covered a lot across like just tempering and just the masterwork and just the spirit of Season 4 in general, just like removing friction points and just keeping players in the flow, the flow of fun.
People want to blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the Doomsayer variants, and again, like the Doomsayer's new activity type, it's kind of like a Kinder Egg surprise where you interact with them, they crackle and pop into something, a variety of things actually. So one of the variants that we had was the Chest of Doomsaying, where they would explode into a tortured gift that costs 50 cinders and gives you a whole lot of good stuff. We're kind of reviewing that, and sometimes what can happen is you can encounter one of these at the very start of your HellTide run, and you don't have 50 cinders. It's not a lot to get, but it still is kind of a stressful, potentially feels bad moment. So we just said, hey, let's just have it explode into the loot directly. You save 50 cinders, and you kind of just keep going on your merry way in the tides. So that's one of the kind of like efficiency smoothing outs that we've done. The next one is also just we're dumping a whole bunch of monsters on you, and it's always a feel bad moment when you get knocked out of an interaction. You're trying just to open up the tortured gift and head out. So we reduced the channel time to open tortured gifts from 3 seconds to 1.5 seconds, I believe, for Season 4 launch proper.
Nice.
That'll help a lot. So, and I think we'll address some feedback of like, why don't we just make it instant, right?
Right. Yeah, we kind of do want to safeguard against like the accidental clicks. Again, it's a frenetic game, so you're clicking a whole bunch, and I think 1.5 seconds is enough time to let you make sure that that's what you want to commit to before you open it.
And there's also like because you guys didn't talk about this, there's changes to like the channeling, like I think with like dot damage and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, dot damage now won't interrupt channeling as well, which I think is a pretty good
which is good. So especially as you are in the frantic areas of HellTide and everything. So lots of HellTide changes, a lot of good feedback from players from PTR. Derek, thanks for walking through on that, but you're not done yet.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. As you guys know, like there is, this is Season 4 Loot Reborn, and part of HellTide includes the Iron Wolves, and Some people have figured that out even before our blog on Tuesday. But we did want to talk a little bit about Season 4 and the Iron Wolves' participation in that, along with some cool things that are specific to seasonal characters for Season 4 as well.
Yeah. So again, as mentioned, the players who joined us in the PTR, or again, caught all the various blog posts, will notice that the Iron Wolves are now a permanent part of the HellTides. They're fighting and dying alongside the players now, and they're here to stay. However, for our seasonal players, we have the Call of the Wolves seasonal activity, where players will get to spend a bit more time with the Iron Wolves and go on a bit of a journey with them to try and uncover the potential root cause behind these rising tides and uncover this mysterious phenomenon that's threatening to corrupt and consume the Iron Wolves from within. In addition to that, again, the Iron Wolves are in the HellTides with you. As players are fighting and dying alongside the Iron Wolves and the HellTides, you're also going to be earning your way through the Wolves Honor reputation system. And this is seeing you progress your way through a collection of just super juiced rewards that are specifically tuned to overpower your leveling journey from level 1 to 100 and beyond. The main pillar for this reputation track was really pushing the player's powers forward. The player power forward. There you go. The player's power forward, and giving them early access to gear with juice stats, legendaries, materials, boss materials, and even a resplendent spark as like a cherry on top at the end.
They keep saying juiced.
We're
juicing everything,
We do,
boys.
yeah,
We're
we do
juiced.
But,
Juiced.
in the spirit of wait, there's more. Those are all like the gameplay related things, but we also have a couple really cool cosmetics that you earn through the collective Call of the Wolf seasonal activity. So this is the Iron Wolf mount trophy, the little Iron Wolf banner, and a little bit fast, but so the Iron Wolf mount trophy. We're doing it live here. That's earned from completing there it is. You can get both of them. That's earned through completing the reputation track, and the Blood Maiden head is earned by completing the associated Call of the Wolf quest line.
Awesome. Yeah, those look really great. And of course, as you mentioned, Resplendent Sparks. And then I know there's one other item that I know we wanted to talk about with this season specific, because it is specific for Season 4. And
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder on that. There's so much to cover.
I know. I know. Derek has like the largest list of items to kind of go through here. So
as mentioned before, on the seasonal team, we love our experiments, and I don't think a season would be one without some level of experiment. So with that, we have the seasonal item, or as kind of like call it the seasonal toy, and that's the Profane Mind Cage. So there it is. So the Profane Mind Cage is pretty cool in the sense that it's a guaranteed drop from the Hellborn, and when you consume it, I kind of like to imagine you just like eating this demon brain.
Yum.
When you consume it, for the next 60 minutes, the HellTide monsters are going to be boosted up to 10 levels, depending on the world tier that you consumed it in, and you're also going to be increasing their Aberrant Cinder drop rates. So, again, all tying this back to that leveling journey and like tempering and stuff, like, this is a really fun item that lets you kind of put your build to a little bit more of a test in exchange for maximizing your HellTide efficiencies through, just one higher monster level means, more XP and stuff like that, and also just Aberrant Cinder drops too.
Yeah.
go ahead.
I
Go
was
ahead,
just gonna say we juiced the World Tier 2, 3, and 4 XP, so
That's
it ties
Yep.
super well. You can just get to blast to endgame very quickly now.
Yep.
Yeah, and with the mind cage itself, like, because everyone's probably going like, well, that's a consumable. Like, how do people end up like obtaining additional ones of those, or can you get more of those throughout the season and everything?
Yeah, we want to be very generous with those. So one, they're a guaranteed drop from the Hellborn in World Tiers 3 and 4, but you can also use them in World Tiers 1 and 2. So if you want to like boost some level, alts and whatnot. You also get I think like a bucket of them through the Wolves Honor reputation. Like, we crammed as many rewards as we could in there, so they will be in steady stream. So don't, again, in the spirit of like use it, don't hoard it. Definitely experiment and have fun with this thing, because it's a game. Have fun.
Yeah, so it's great. Like, if you want a little bit more of a challenge, a little bit better rewards as well, you can of course use your mind cage, and that is exclusive for players in the season. So yeah, it's awesome to see. But yeah, thank you, Derek, for walking us through all the changes with HellTide, and of course some of the new season stuff with the Iron Wolves. And if you're a lore nerd, Iron Wolves, of course, are a very familiar faction within Diablo. They are from Diablo 2, Act 3. You could actually hire them as some of your mercenaries, or one of the mercenary options, though we know a lot of people went with an Act 2 mercenary in Diablo 2 for the aura. But yes, cool. Thank you so much, Derek. And of course, we still have more to talk about. We're actually going to go back to Colin. And Colin is going to talk us through a little bit about the pit. The pit is a brand new feature within Season 4 and is now a permanent feature within Diablo 4.
That's right.
Yeah, do you want to give us a breakdown for people who may have not experienced the pit or may have not seen the stream beforehand?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, tell us about all the improvements that we're doing to the pit based off of feedback.
Yeah, so, something that players have asked for since we did a bunch of nerfs to the Nightmare Dungeons, if you recall, I forget what season it was, but we made tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons a lot easier so players could get through them. One of the big pieces of feedback we got was, okay, well, where's my measuring stick? The game is a power fantasy. It's about getting as much raw power as possible and just dominating, right? So if there's no place to push back, then everything is just a little bit too easy. So the Pit of the Artificer is our answer to that measuring stick. You're going to be able to push very deep into the pit. There's a lot of levels. We were inspired by Abattoir of Zir.
That's what she
but
said.
To be very clear, Abattoir of Zir was a special case in that each tier jump was just brutal.
It was
right?
exponential.
Yeah, it was ridiculously hard every single tier, and it's you could only get to 7, which isn't very heroic or powerful, right? So we've taken a lot of the learnings from Abattoir of Zir. The pit goes very deep. There's many more tiers. It's much more gradual, so you can start pushing into it and getting some of these masterworking material rewards. And the pit is all about, just blasting through monsters and the demons of hell, right? There's no negative modifiers. We're not CCing you a bunch. This is really just a test of how powerful your build is. So from the PTR, we actually got feedback that it was way too easy because we added a ton of power through tempering, through the Codex of Power. It's just much easier to get a lot of those aspects online. So we've taken a look and we've moved some of the masterworking material tiers around. Previously, the tier 1 masterworking materials only came from 1 to 20. We've moved that up 10 tiers. So tier 1 will come from 1 to 29. Tier 2 will come from 30 to 59, and tier 3 will be 60 plus. And what that does is it just makes the journey feel a little bit more rewarding, right? We saw in the PTR that people just within the first 2 hours just blasted through all of it because they're so powerful. So we've just adjusted some of the rates there. So you have to push a little bit deeper. You have to optimize your build a little bit more. So those armor caps are things to watch out for, right? Where if you're over the armor cap, it's just a straight optimization to start thinking about how you want to replace some of that armor. We think that feels pretty good. And overall, we've increased the health and damage, or sorry, I should say, increased the health on all monsters post level 100, both in the pit and Nightmare Dungeons. So the enemies should be pushing back on you a little bit more, right? You care a little bit more about utility, defense, outside of just one-shotting everything, right? So it sort of tests you a lot more. And part of that feedback, though, that we've heard is that, Nightmare Dungeons don't feel very rewarding. The pit doesn't feel super rewarding post, that 60 tier when you're getting those top-end masterworking materials. So we've done 2 major changes. One is we've added obols that scale with both of these tiers. So everything past tier 46 in Nightmare Dungeons and everything past tier 1 in the pit, actually. It just always gives you obols. You might ask, but obols are terrible. But again,
why do I want obols, Colin?
I know, right? A big part of season 4 was that we made the gambler guarantee 925 legendaries at level 100, and those legendaries can roll greater affixes. So if you blow a ton of obols on 2-handers, for example, those 2-handed legendaries you're getting are the same as anywhere else in the game. So it's actually a huge efficiency boost to getting the items you're looking for.
So to be clear, you can get some of the best items in the game from the obol vendor now.
Absolutely.
So that makes them a lot more valuable.
And one thing that is also changing with obols, it's because when people pick up obols, they're like, oh, I've got my cap, and now I'm
someone's
I'm
typing,
I run back to town.
But Colin, the obol cap is fucked. So we've increased the obol cap substantially. So the amount of obols you get now is 2,500. You can hold up to.
Oh yeah.
So you can just go to the gambler and be like, give me everything, and you can just do that a couple of times.
Yeah. So get your obols and hit the tables. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah, exactly. And the items are incredible.
And just to double down on this for a second too, one of the things that we also did as part of this, when you use the enchanting feature in Diablo 4, you can't actually enchant off of an affix into a greater affix.
That's right.
Yes.
So when a good item drops for you in the base game, you can't try to like roll for greater affixes off the enchanting system.
Yeah.
It's good for getting you to a stat you really need in a situation where an item didn't get you what you wanted.
Yeah.
But now with the Opals vendor, like those items, not only are they iPower 925 and they have the chance to be legendary, of course, like the Opals vendor always has, but you also have a chance to get greater affixes off those gambled items.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a particular pair of gloves, you're looking for a particular helmet, and you're saying I really want a greater affix version of cooldown reduction on my helmet. Right, like now it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to take my 2,000 Opals. I'm going to go to the vendor. I'm just going to gamble, and try to get that one helmet.
Yeah.
Like now I have a chance to really do that, and this is a way for you to like getting more drops and such inside the pit is one thing, but giving you more choice when you get out of a pit run, I think is very valuable.
It's gonna feel way better. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gamble.
Yeah, and another change we made was to Glyph XP. We got a bunch of feedback that's like, God, what the hell, Nightmare Dungeon. So we've increased the Glyph XP by 25%, which is faster leveling. And we've also scaled the amount of rune shards, which is the pit currency to get into the pit, with Nightmare Dungeon. So you can create sort of a positive feedback loop if you're really strong, you're really powerful, you're hitting those tier 100s. In the Nightmare Dungeons, you're getting tons of pit keys that you can then translate into the pit and just get lots of runs and lots of masterworking there.
Yeah, so a lot of feedback from Nightmare Dungeons. People were saying like, hey, are we planning on making any changes to that Glyph XP? And so there are some. We sure did. We actioned on it for sure. So and there's funny enough. There's also even in the season journey, I believe there's also like changes to the ashes themselves where you can actually use that to boost even like Glyph XP is also part of that. With the season journey. So very cool stuff that we have.
One more. Sorry. I have this list, but then I don't actually read it.
But
it's just like a prop. Yeah, sorry. The one other thing that we did was we heard a bunch of feedback that players were dying at the end of the pit because we have this like shadow boss that sometimes comes in and throws a wrench in what you're doing. And as much as I push for learn to play, our encounter designers.
I like to play good philosophy in person.
Ruthless.
Absolutely.
Take that, hardcore players. Surprise.
Surprise.
Isn't it fun to die after you killed the boss? So our encounter designer did an amazing job cleaning up a lot of those affixes after you kill that boss, and the arena should be clear now after you kill that boss.
As chat says, get good. We saw that a lot, and if you're a hardcore player, that would have been a tragic loss to your character.
I prefer the word hilarious.
Yeah, some designers like fist pumping, like, yes, got him.
Just watching streams and reactions from that. So awesome. So a lot of changes coming for the pit. Pit is, of course, a new feature within Diablo 4 permanently, and you can experience that in Eternal and Seasonal realms. And of course, we have some updates to the boss ladder because the boss ladder itself is changing pretty significantly. We talked a little bit about like how you can get additional materials in other places that Derek had mentioned, but Colin has additional points that he wants to bring up about the boss ladder because we got a lot of feedback on that, and there's some new changes to it with Season 4.
Yeah, so we added Andariel, the best lesser evil.
Yes. Boo, Asmodan.
I
Boo.
know. Always dunking me.
He just dunks me with orbs all day. Who likes that guy?
Yeah. So Andariel, obviously, has come back. She's incredibly fun to fight. The encounter design team killed it. And on top of Andariel, we've added a new tier to the boss ladder called Tormented Bosses. So these are much higher level than level 200 bosses. Sort of pinnacle aspirational bosses to take down. And what we've done here is we heard a bunch of feedback that it required 5 times the amount of boss materials, including some rare pit material to summon these, and 5 times the reward. That didn't really feel like the right amount of reward efficiency for taking on something that was challenging, so we've nerfed the cost. It's now 3x the amount of boss material and 5x the reward, so you get some pretty big efficiency wins there, especially if you're crushing them in the end game. So that's feeling pretty good, we think. We also heard a lot of feedback that it's tedious to do the same activity over and over and over to summon some of these things, right? So it's like, I want to summon Penitent Knight, or I want to do the Beast of Ice. I know you and I have done that one like you know,
every
hundreds
build
of
I've
times.
chosen in a season
Yeah,
requires the Beast and Ice, and
it's like, I guess
I'm
I'm
just
doing
stuck in
another Nightmare Dungeon.
hell forever. It's
Yeah.
been great.
Yeah.
Very
So,
happy about that.
yeah. Well, we made it better. A lot of our random, you know, monsters and activities and things like that. So, you know, elites, whisper caches, treasure goblins, world bosses, you know, Hellborn, to name a few, are all going to start randomly dropping these boss materials. So, you know, you're not necessarily forced into doing one exact activity. It's still going to be the absolute best way to get some of this boss material. But as long as you're blasting, you're just going to be getting a lot of these materials ambiently, which you can trade. You can just sort of cash in on at your heart's desire. I mean, we think this makes the game feel more flexible and just sort of enables you to play a little bit more on how you want to play while still keeping the experience fresh. So we think that's going to be a pretty big win.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. To jump back into the Torment bosses, just because I'm going to jump around a little bit, we heard a bunch of feedback, especially from Wudijo. Hopefully he's watching. Is that
There's
the
no
bosses?
way Wudijo's watching right
I
now.
know, probably not. Yeah, it's not very interesting. We did some tuning to make sure that the tormented versions have some more parity, right? It was sort of like in a scenario where like one of the ladder bosses was just like dead easy, didn't really match the difficulty of the rest, and that's important.
It's lagging up again.
Because we give you one guaranteed Resplendent Spark one time for defeating any of these. So one step closer to getting that uber unique that's not just a raw drop of your choice, which is pretty awesome. And then something else, you know, speaking of Resplendent Sparks, we're adding one to Uber Lilith. So the first time you kill Uber Lilith, you're also going to get another Resplendent Spark.
So now that brings us to 3 opportunities of being able to earn yourself a Resplendent
203
Spark. We
sparks?
One from
That's some
Derek at
BS.
the end of the season, the Iron Wolves, you know, board, and doing that within the season. We now have one with the Echo of Lilith, and of course one with your first Tormented boss as well. So additional opportunities to earn Resplendent Sparks, and of course you can still salvage your any Uber gear that you do happen to find, and you can actually earn a Resplendent Spark.
Yeah. So what that means is if you do all of these and then you get an Uber unique, you can actually change that into whatever one you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is really what that means.
And then something else, you know, on the Uber uniques is that
I'm just laughing because I didn't realize this, but chat's calling out with our tooltip that we showed. We had 200 plus Resplendent Sparks.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you.
We're just really lucky and good.
Yeah.
That's how I get them.
Let me tell you guys
Is that how you
about
get them?
dev tools.
Yeah, that's actually my account online.
Right.
So.
Oh yeah, there you go. Nice.
So on the Uber uniques, you know, we heard a bunch of feedback that it feels like a chore to have to do, you know, the penance at night into Varshan, into doing Duriel just for a chance at an Uber unique, right? And you know, we've experienced that ourselves, right? It's like, God, I got to do all this stuff to fight the boss that's going to actually drop something that I care about. You know, Greater Affix has helped that because, you know, there's some variation to the uniques you're going to get. But for Uber uniques, we've actually added a small chance, a little bit lower than Duriel, to all of the ladder bosses, and they're going to have a chance to drop an Uber unique as well. So, you know, while you're grinding through this ladder, every single boss you kill is going to have a chance to drop an Uber unique. It's not exactly the same as Duriel and Duriel. We should do like a combo, like Duriel.
A lot of Uriels.
And we think that's going to make it feel a lot better.
Awesome. So yeah, a lot of changes coming with boss ladder and changes based off of PTR feedback that we saw.
Yep.
Plus just overall changes for season 4 that we were planning, so that it's gives more opportunities for players to actually experience it. And of course, the new versions of the bosses themselves and their Tormented Echo versions. So awesome. Thank you so much, Colin.
Of course.
And I know we wanted to, before we jump into Q&A, because we're getting towards the end of our updates for season 4. Mr. Adam Jackson wants to talk a little bit about the season journey. This is actually something really cool.
One last thing. Us over on Class Designer, we're really passionate about this and we're excited for it. So the season journey. So we really want to kind of juice the rewards and make the season journey more exciting. And so what we went and did was, when you're going through the season journey for every class, you're actually going to be getting a preset, curated amount of legendaries as you're going through that are targeted toward a specific build. So we chose a build for every class in Season 4, and we're going to change it around in future seasons. Please give us feedback on this, but we think it'll be pretty cool. But you're basically going to get like close to a completed build when it comes to opening those caches. They're guaranteed targeted legendaries to build a specific fantasy for every class. I think we have a video to show what they're going to be for every class in Season 4.
Maybe.
Maybe there. So Barbarian here, you can see we're going to be giving you a bunch of legendaries related to Dust Devils. The Druid, we're going to be giving you basically a pulverized build, which is pretty cool. Next is the Necromancer. Of course, everybody's going to be playing minions, so we gave you a bunch of minion-focused legendaries. This should be pretty awesome. And then next is the Sorceress. We actually have a cool new legendary coming into the game for Incinerate, which you'll see here.
Yeah,
it
there
splits
it
up.
is.
So we were giving you an Incinerate build on the Sorceress. And then the Rogue, we're giving you one targeted toward Barrage. So again, kind of the point of this is that, you know, if you don't really know what you want to play, or you really want to just go through a season journey and try out something before you go to a build that you really want to do, you have a foundation of something more complete to start with, which we're pretty excited about. We think it'll be really cool.
And with the Codex change now, you also get to play all those items are actually dropping out of the season journey caches. You get to kind of keep those. They all go into your Codex. You can use that build for the entirety of your leveling process.
Correct.
Yeah.
Awesome. So lots of changes coming this season. Sorry, my mic died halfway through there, so I had to do a quick mic swap as we were playing.
We were
footage.
free from
Also, Joe Pipor's back. Hi, Joe. Derek is now over here. So if people are confused of like what's going on, we are playing musical chairs today. That is also a new feature coming in season 4. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so a lot of changes. Season 4, pretty huge. It's by far the biggest season for Diablo 4 yet. And I know we wanted to jump into Q&A. I did want to bring up one thing as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which is, this is a change that will be represented in, by the way, patch notes are coming out immediately after this stream. So,
geez, okay.
So that's one thing. So yeah, people can check out patch notes immediately after this stream.
Please enjoy reading it as much as we enjoyed writing it.
Writing it and reviewing it and editing
it.
it. And I wouldn't, based off of the size of the patch notes, I wouldn't be surprised if we do have a few things that might be missing that we'll probably like have to post add if as we're kind of going through it, just because it's massive in terms of size, as people saw from PTR, and now it's just even
it
larger.
represents a few different teams like effort trying to deliver this too.
Yeah. So patch notes will be up. One thing in the patch notes that I did want to bring up is, and this is a thing that's coming in season 4, is for players that want to change their hair on their characters themselves, they can actually go to the wardrobe now and actually be able to do it, which is a nice, like, good quality of life feature. We've heard a lot of people go like, hey, I kind of want to, I made that character a while ago, especially like an Eternal character or something like that. I'd like to be able to change that around. Yeah, I now have that flexibility of being able to do so, which is actually really cool. So we're going to jump into Q&A as usual, as we always do. We will start off with a question. This is actually something that's been a popular topic that a lot of people have been talking about since PTR, and of course, even this week with the blog itself. But
don't leave me in suspense.
I know. I think we have the question. There it is. What does this mean for season powers in the future?
Oh, just what season 4 is, like the nature of season 4?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So yeah, season 4 is Season 4, as I mentioned before, is like an opportunity for us to kind of like lift up a lot of aspects of the game that we think are really important. Diablo is a game about killing monsters and getting loot. And as I've said before, getting loot, we need to make sure it feels at least as good as killing monsters, right? Like it's extremely important that this part feels good. And we took a lot of our development effort and put it against that goal as part of this release. And there were other parts of the game that we lifted up at the same time, like the various changes that we talked about for HellTide, for example. You know, the myriad new tempering recipes and things like that. There's lots of things we did, I think, as part of the release, just make the base experience of Diablo 4 more fun, right? So I'm really excited we're able to do that in Season 4. Thinking about what the future holds, we always want to make sure that with every season, we are adapting to what we think the game needs at that time. We think it's going to make for a better experience overall. We love the idea of seasonal powers. We've learned a lot of really, really great stuff from the days of the Barber, all the way through the vampiric powers we got in Season 2, and all the Seneschal and Construct stuff we had in Season 3. We have lots of big ideas for the future, so but you will see seasonal powers again in the future and different themes and mechanics as we go. That's kind of our promise to you. And with the things that we have in terms of like the Iron Wolves quest line and the various rewards you get, changes we made to the season journey for like getting like all of those themed items, those various like kind of aspect builds together as you kind of progress through. We want to keep building upon these mechanical elements as well at the same time to kind of continue to help lift up the experience. So yeah, we will be returning seasonal powers in the future. But with every season, we want to make sure that we're doing what we think is going to be up, like lifting the game up the most, the things that we think are most important at that time.
Awesome. question from our, I'll bounce between some questions from chat and from our forums, because we did have a thread up in our forums about specific questions, but this one's from the forums. This is from Avalon. They're asking if, because Season 3 actually ran longer and Season 4 itself had a PTR, will Season 4 actually be a shortened season, or will it still be a standard size season? They weren't sure how PTR is actually affecting the time on it.
So PTR is not as impactful for the timing here. I think it's a slightly shorter season. I think it's like 1 week shorter or something. I need to look at the date.
Yeah, and I will note, like, PTR, the reason why Season 3 ran longer was because we wanted to make sure that we could get that PTR. This was our first PTR, so there was a little bit more effort needed to get that out for players.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So like, I think about when I'm thinking about the future and like what PTRs look like, what we want things to be like. It's not that like having a PTR automatically means that everything is going to take longer to deliver. But there was a lot of things we had to set up for the first time for the PTR for Season 4, and I'm really glad that we did, because as I think you've seen, there's a lot of things we learned as going through the process.
And it gave us the time to iterate and use the feedback too, which we did a lot of things on based on.
Question from Blake Darko CS. Will you guys think about maybe a potential different beam color for items with greater affixes?
So I know we talked about this for a while.
Yeah, I think that's something we're definitely going to keep an eye on. Like right now, we think that the little dots, or I should say huge dots, the huge stars on them, are doing a pretty good job. But that's something that we also need to feel out and play, and we're super open to feedback and seeing how these new big stars are going to help.
Yeah. The change, especially the changes in the inventory, because now you can actually identify them in your inventory, and everything is really big.
And these also roll on unique, so there's a little bit of work that we'll need to figure out. But again,
it's true. Yeah, you can get greater affix on unique items as well.
So it's the beam color gets a little confusing there. So something that we'll monitor for sure, and of course something that we've seen from players and a lot of people bringing that specifically up. Fire Dragon Dad says that the Season 4 update's going to retro into existing Eternal. So everything we talked about today, with the exception of the Iron Wolves questline stuff, is actually present in the Eternal realm. So players, like the Codex power changes, everything like that will be there. I know there are a lot of questions related to the Codex changes, especially for Eternal players. And just to clarify, if you have aspects in your inventory and your stash, it'll take whatever your highest roll of that specific aspect, and that will become your new best Codex entry when Season 4 does start. You may need to log on to specific characters on Eternal to at least for us to be able to check your inventory, but the stash I know will automatically move over there. Cool. And same thing for I know we get a lot of questions about items on Eternal. Those will be marked as legacy items specifically, because obviously we've changed a lot of affixes and everything.
And those items you can't craft on those items either at that point. You can't temper those items, and you can't masterwork those items. But they'll still retain the item upgrade state that they had from the blacksmith before.
Exactly. So if it doesn't mean when you log on all your gear is suddenly unusable. It's just marked as legacy, and you wouldn't.
Why does it keep doing that?
You won't be able to use tempering or master.
It's a great stepping off point to getting some new items that could have greater affixes and other things that could make it even more powerful.
Yeah.
A question that we have actually from the forums. This is from Iggy. With the itemization reworks, is there what is the next big thing you guys are actually looking at potentially wanting to really work on within the team? I don't know if we want to play our cards too early.
Well, I think
we're working on things.
We're working on all kinds of stuff, everybody. But no, I think one thing we want to continue to work on, I think you see as we're thinking more about the end game experience, a lot when we launched Diablo 4, we thought of end game really as a journey from really from 50 to 100, the things you're doing along the way, and getting all of your Comparagon glyphs and leveling those glyphs up, and diving deeper into Nightmare Dungeons, and going and eventually confronting Lilith. That was what we kind of imagined, or thought that endgame would feel like, and that was a good thing for us to build on. I think we saw that a lot more players were looking for endgame explicitly at level 100. Yeah. That was when they wanted a lot more things to open up, and we've made a lot of changes recently to try to create more gameplay around that part of the experience, between the itemization changes and the crafting changes, and also the introduction of tormented bosses, and of course the Pay the Artificer. Yeah. So I think that we know that there's more opportunities for us to build on these things, right? I think you've heard me say this before, but a lot of the things we're doing in Season 4 specifically really are done to build a new framework, for how endgame sort of functions, the things that drive a player forward, the things that get them excited, and the content that they engage with along the way as well, right? we want to make sure that they're having that players are having a really fun time or rewarding time while they're playing Diablo 4, and that they can find opportunities to be appropriately challenged as they go through the experience as well. We think there's more opportunities for us to kind of like grow and expand the offerings of things that players can have access to, the things they can go experience, at that stage of the game.
Awesome. Question from Old Dudes, New Games. I love these names. They're so good. What about codex resetting when swapping characters? That was actually just an issue on PTR. Like when you swapped characters and stuff like that. Sorry.
Yeah, when you
Lost
swap,
the
then
mic.
you use the when you use the boost NPC. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was not a thing that you will experience with season 4, and so that's not a common thing or a normal thing that's supposed to actually happen. It just was a bug that we had in PTR. There's a lot of questions here about the mind cage, and I just want to maybe clarify with the players. Opus Crocus says, if you consume more than one, does the mind cage stack or does the timer reset?
Timer reset, I think.
Yeah, the timer resets.
Timer resets, okay. And then in regards to, again, this is from Optics, do mind cages trigger for a single player or your whole group if you're grouped up?
Single player.
Just a single player. Yeah, it's a personal thing. Okay. All right. So clarity around the mind cages, because I know we've had a lot of people ask specifically.
And we want
about
feedback
that.
on this, by the way, too. So when you get a chance to play with the mind cage during the season, tell us what you think. We want to
know. This is from Nupu Games. Do unique items get a stat/functionality boost since tempered legendaries are just straight up better? And is it generally not worth it to equip a unique item after the patch?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adam can speak to some of these changes if you wanted to jump in, but we've done a pass on all the unique items. We've done things like Razor Blade, I think has 4 Thorns affixes, and we changed what the legendary power is.
Yeah. By the way, that was a big question we got from people in PTR, because they were like, hey, what about Razor Blade?
We heard a lot. We had to change Razor Blade, but it'll be cool.
And it's actually in the patch notes, and it's a lot of Thorns.
Razor Blade's hilarious. We still love it.
It's hilarious.
I wanted to just have like 1 so you can't miss on Masterwork.
Yeah.
But
what I'll say though about the unique to legendary item power level, I suppose, is that we knew when we were making these tempering changes and updating those that we wanted legendaries, because they kind of have they have kind of different identities right now in the game, and so we're still figuring out what we want to do with uniques long term. But the idea is that like legendary items, or items really, they have a journey, and you're working on them, and there's a story to them, and you get it, and it's not like a one-stop shop, you're done, kind of like how they were before. Uniques, a part of their identity is that you get a unique and it's freaking awesome and really powerful and very exciting, and you have it and you're done with it. Mm-hmm. And so we're keeping this discrepancy of like what their purposes are in the game for now, and kind of seeing how it goes. We did take a look at some uniques, but we didn't do a whole pass of every single unique now has 5 affixes or something like that. Like, we wanted them to be a little bit different, have different identities. So we do kind of expect that uniques may be less prevalent than they were before. We still believe, though, that a lot of uniques are really key for various builds, and so you're still going to want them. But you're not going to want, a unique in every single slot in your character now, because they're just clearly always better, right? Sometimes some builds will want more uniques, some will want less, and we want to kind of see how that plays first before making sweeping changes. Some obvious roads we could take is adding crafting to uniques. What if you could temper them? What if you could do these other things, right? We know that that's a thing, and we may do that in the future, but we're kind of evaluating this world where it's not clearly always you only get one or the other, and we kind of want to see how that goes first before making any big changes.
Yeah, and the fixed nature sort of has you consider it's part of your optimization puzzle, right?
Yes.
I'm going to give up some tempering affixes to get this unique, for example, in my chest slot, for example. And we sort of want to see where that goes. We think that's fun. And
groups and with the pit.
I didn't write it down, and I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
So we got a bunch of feedback that it sucks to help someone with their pit run and just not get any masterworking material. It's like, well, why am I here? So what we've done is we've made it so that the person who opens the pit is going to get 100% of the masterworking materials. Previously, I think it was split, maybe across all players. And what we've done now is that The person who opens it gets 100%, and then everyone who helps defeat the pit gets 50% of that target goal. So we're trying to walk that line where group play isn't just like totally overwhelmingly efficient, but you're still getting something for helping each other like go through those pit levels.
Yeah, we heard a lot of feedback about players going like, it feels a little unrewarding to get. And so there were some changes.
In general, I think there's still some tension with how players feel about the efficiency of groups versus the efficiency of solo play with like boss summons and things like that. These are things we're thinking about. We have ideas on, but we want to continue to get feedback, particularly with these changes, and kind of see how things play out.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We're getting questions about, hey, are there any updates on social features and things like that coming to D4? Don't know if we have anything to share right now. It's something obviously the team is very well. You guys ask all the time, so we're very, very aware of it. And the team is been looking at it, and once we have more to share, we'll end up sharing it with you guys. But for right now, we don't have any update.
Yeah.
There's questions about it. If there's plans of adding maybe potential leaderboards to the pit or anything, or is that going to be something that's just exclusively on the Gauntlet?
I think the idea of adding leaderboards to other types of content over time makes sense. Could be pretty fun, But right now, I really want to see how the pit plays on its own. The trials feature and challenge ladder, like we really want that to be a place where players can, or the Gauntlet, like it's a place we really want players to be able to like go and compete in a very fixed environment, a very like extremely fair environment, which is like what we really prioritize as part of the release. The pit is pretty variable, run to run, so that makes it a little more complicated. It doesn't mean that we would never add it. I think that there's a clear indicator that it'd be pretty fun to have this slightly looser leaderboard associated with a feature like this.
Yeah.
But we're going to see how things play out, and we'll be thinking about how we can add more competitive features like that to the game over time.
Question from Elro here. I didn't pronounce that right, but
Elro here. I think that is actually
nailed it.
It's like an elven name right now.
Since not everyone actually experienced PTR, because PTR itself was on PC BattleNet, but. They were asking when tempering, can you keep previous rolls?
Can you keep previous rolls?
Like the enchanting system.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Currently, right now, we don't have the functionality to let you keep the roll. Right now, if you're going to commit to re-rolling, you're going to lose that
You're
previous
committing
one.
to re-rolling.
Yeah, it's sort of like the blacksmith is hammering on that item and unlocking different aspects of the weapon. You sort of lose what you previously had. But we're open to feedback, right? It's a completely new feature. We really want to hear how it's playing, and ultimately what we want is a fun crafting feature. So if that sort of feedback is really valuable.
We'll take two more, and one is from Matt LOL. Is tempering going to allow changes for the skills, the skill type, like maybe lightning hydras, or maybe changes to Blizzard where it's a rain of fire or something like that?
That's pretty cool.
Honestly, anything an Apex can do.
Yeah.
It is open season of things we could potentially do in the future. Yeah, not in season 4, but possibly in the future.
Awesome. And this is actually from
There's a lot of space to grow.
There is.
Utility is a category that we can do. There's a lot of space to do
utility.
interesting things potentially. Yeah.
There's a lot of questions in here about like additional character customization options and stuff like that coming in the future. It is like something the team is always looking at, adding additional things for players to have more choice of what they want to do, especially as they're creating characters. And of course, being able to obtain those, like even just some things in season 4 of being able to get additional, cosmetic things for your mount and everything like that is something that the team is most definitely looking at.
Yeah, we care about this a great deal. I think one thing that's very interesting about Diablo 4, or a problem that we have that's very specific, right, is there are actually quite a few cosmetics for players to earn out on bosses and things, like throughout the game. Like there's lots of things for players to collect cosmetically in the game. But it's really hard to know that drops off that thing in Diablo 4. Like you can go and you could fight a world boss 50 times and not have a drop occur for you, right? Like then eventually you get your special horse. You're like, oh, okay, it is here, but you have no idea. So it's kind of like it's harder to know exactly where to grind. We're actually talking about that a bit on the dev side. See if like there's more ways we can kind of like make it clear where certain things can be found, which I think could be really fun.
Yeah.
But I think that there's work we can do there, and also there's still work we can do about just trying to get more cool looks into the game. So we've been talking a lot more with the various teams inside Diablo 4, and there's a broad agreement we want to bring more cool stuff to you guys, and more cool stuff for players to find and pick up and equip and feel like it was really exciting to get that thing. One thing we're doing like already is we're like as we develop more uniques, we're trying to make sure that we have like more unique appearances to go with all of them. We have like a lot of really fun ideas. And we have to constantly like wrestle with like, all right, we only have like this X many swords, but like we have like this many ideas for swords, and we want to like try to get this in the game. We want to wait till we have the artwork for a sword. We usually try to make sure that we've got a fun toy to immediately give you. But we're going to make sure we're trying to get more of that stuff in game as well. So there's just even more artwork to the unique system for players to collect.
Awesome. So that's all the time we got right here for today. We went over all the changes, or not actually. There's even more changes. There's actually more changes in the patch notes. We can't go through every single line in the patch notes over a stream, so you guys can actually check out the patch notes. Those will be available on Diablo4.com. We always have those listed on our specific patch notes page, and those will be live immediately after this stream. Season 4, Loot Reborn, starts on May 14th. This is across all platforms. It's on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and of course, if you're an Xbox and PC Game Pass user, you can also play Diablo 4 now via PC Battle.net or on your Xbox. So lots of opportunities to play, and of course, Steam. Can't forget Steam. Steam is also on there for PC.
That's also a platform.
That is also a platform. We're everywhere.
Any other platforms you want to just shout out? Or?
We're everywhere.
Oh, all right, we're everywhere.
Just everywhere. But again, thanks to everyone for tuning in. We're looking forward to you guys jumping into Season 4 Loot Reborn. Yeah, we'll see you guys in game. And thanks again.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
All right, so we're going to be looking at the patch notes when they go live. I got the page. I'm trying to reload it to see when it pops up. Patch notes. Come on, patch notes. So let's go over some of this stuff while we're waiting on the patch notes to come up, because they're currently 404 Murloc not found. And I'll talk about some of this stuff while we're waiting. So first off, one of the most glaring things that really kind of stuck out at me is rares still have 2 affixes. They acknowledged that the community was upset that rares only have 2 affixes.
Hello to all the.
And after they were very clear that the rares only having 2 affixes was an issue and that the community wanted it fixed, they said, yeah, maybe we'll do it in the future, but it's not happening now. We might think of some way to make them useful. Then they proceeded to make the rare items even less useful. They said, well, we're going to make it so that the rare items don't drop any materials anymore. So that they basically just don't drop materials. So if you take them back to town and you deconstruct them, they're just not going to give you any materials anymore. And we're going to make the legendary items give you more materials. So not only are the rare items not useful in their current state, but they're not even worth taking back to town for materials anymore. Because at this point, with the exception of gold, which is the only reason we might bring them back at this point, the rare items have no value whatsoever in the game at this point. They're not worth taking back to destroy, they're not worth taking back to use, and they're not worth taking back to turn into legendaries, and they're not worth taking back for pretty much any purpose other than selling them for gold. So at this point, one of the takeaways that you can take from this campfire chat is that rare items are now complete and utter garbage that nobody wants and nobody's going to pick up unless you're like a little baby character that's level 1 and you just got some of your first rare item. Like maybe you'll grab some rare items in the beginning of the game when you first start. And then after that, once you start getting your legendary items, you're not going to use rare items anymore. Which is really freaking weird. I don't know why they went like from acknowledging that we wanted rare items to be useful to adding this line in, which basically made rare items even less useful than they were before. They're just like, oh, you guys don't like the fact that rare items are less useful? Let's make them even less useful. They talked about fixing the veiled crystals, so I guess we'll have to see that. They basically said they adjusted a lot of stuff with the veiled crystals to make them easier to obtain. They also said they made the masterworking fail chance gone, but also increased the amount of materials that they required. Which was an interesting thing. They added greater affix visual indicators, so that was a whole other thing. Honestly, they should have added like a unique color to it, but they just added a big asterisk or something. Made it relatively obvious that the asterisk was there. Look, the patch notes are up. All right, let's go over the patch notes. Actually, let's talk about this real quick. So they capped armor at 9,230, and that was really weird. I think most characters hit 9,230 armor like in their sleep. I'm not entirely sure what the point of the Juggernaut or the what's the other aspect? I can't remember the other aspect for some reason.
Disobedience.
Disobedience. I'm not sure what the point of any of those are like right now. Because if 9,230 is the cap that you got to hit, I'm pretty sure we're all hitting 9,230 right now. And that also means that the advantage that the Barbarian had of being able to hit like the highest armor values is gone. Because the Barbarian's going to hit this 9,230 in his sleep. Like he's gonna yawn and hit 9,230 armor. So I'm not really quite sure. Unless they adjusted all the armor modifiers or something. I don't know. Let's go over the patch notes and let's start looking at these. So feature updates. There's no longer a chance for masterworking to fail. The masterworking animation has been removed for non-milestone ranks 1 to 3, 5 to 7, etc. So basically, they only left it in for the 25% bonus, which is honestly good because the masterworking animation was just stupid. 12 upgrades with multiple failures. Now they took out the failures and also removed the animation. It'll be a hell of a lot faster. Tempering result screen now shows the result affix, its role, and the affix range. Various UI improvements for tempering and masterworking experiences. Added multiple tiers of masterworking material caches that transmute far more materials than were previously available. So we don't have to open up 3,000 boxes. That's good. Visual indication has been added to the imprint UI, which indicates which legendary affixes are currently equipped. You can now search the term equip or equipped within the Codex of Power to list currently equipped affixes. That's kind of nice. We've added an inventory icon to indicate that the items have at least one greater affix. When the items with greater affixes drop in game, they will also have the same icon to indicate they possess a greater affix. HellTide in the pit. The party member that spends the rune shards to open the pit gets 100% of the masterworking materials. The rest of the party receives half the amount. I'm not really sure I understand this. I mean, wouldn't you want to encourage group play? I mean, I think before it was like the person... I could have sworn we were still getting masterworking materials even when we were in a group. So are they reducing it or did they increase it from PTR? I don't understand. Because I'm fairly certain that I was running this with other people and we were getting plenty of masterworking materials like in a group. Maybe we just didn't notice that one person was getting way more than everybody else. Artillery blast wave shrines no longer spawn in the pits. Wow, that's an odd change. Hellborn spawn chance in HellTide zones has been increased. Baneful heart drop rate has been adjusted to be more consistent. Overall loot quality from the Blood Maiden has been improved. Loot quality has also been improved for players that contribute materials to summon the Blood Maiden as a contribution bonus reward. I mean, honestly, it sounds like they're trying to make sure that people are spending their materials, and if you spend materials, you get boss mats, is what they were talking about. So it looks like spending your hearts is going to be a big deal. You're going to want to get, you know, at least one of the 3 slots. Doomslayer variants, which used to drop Chest of Doomsaying on defeat, will now drop the contents of the Doomsaying chest with no additional cinder cost. Many tempering affixes that were either overperforming or underperforming have been adjusted to meet the intended power levels. So this is going to be like a big thing. We're probably not going to be able to see all of these tempering affix changes. I doubt they have them all listed here. But if it's any indication of how many tempering affixes there are in the game, I mean, there's basically like 6 categories, and it looked to me like there was anywhere between like 6 to 8 different categories in each category. So you're looking at 6 times 8. And then, of course, you also have multiple classes, and each class has their own specific categories as well. So there was probably like, I don't know, let's just multiply that by 5. There's like at least like 240 tempering affixes, probably more than that, to be honest with you. But I doubt they're going to show them all here and what they adjusted. They did kind of go over some of it during the campfire chat. They talked about how they had capped off increased area size to 100%. So basically, like, if you have any kind of ability in the tempering that was increasing the area size of an ability, it's now capped off at 100% in general, which they have down here. So the tempering affix for maximum size increased for various skills and effects, such as Dust Devils. Bone Spirit is now capped at 100%. It could be interesting to see how large Bone Spirit gets. Itemization updates. For full details on itemization, including legendary aspects and codex of power, item affixes, greater affixes, tempering, masterworking, please read our Season 4 blog. Here are some of the major items coming with the itemization update. Extracting an aspect now upgrades it in the codex. All aspects now exist in the codex of power. Various item affixes have been updated, and the overall pool of affixes has been condensed. Additionally, greater affixes have been introduced, appearing only on ancestral and legendary unique items. These are more powerful 1.5 times version of normal affixes, and each item affixes has a chance to be a greater affix in the world tier 4. New tempering and masterworking systems allow deeper customization of items and access to new affixes. Legendary items dropped from the enemy, a level 95 plus, are always 925 item power. Unique items can now drop earlier in the game, so you can get unique items in world tier 1 and 2 apparently. But World Tier 3 unique items now drop as non-sacred in World Tier 1 and 2. World Tier 4 unique items now drop as sacred in World Tier 3, and then Uber unique items can start dropping from monsters as low as level 55, and they'll always drop at 925 item power. So you might end up getting like a Harlequin Crest Shaco or something crazy at like level 55. And, I mean, that'd be kind of cool, especially if it rolls with like a really low level requirement. Can you imagine getting your hands on a sacred 925 like Harlequin Crest Shaco or something that you could then proceed to use across all of your characters? Just like, let me just put on my Shaco, so no big deal. The minimum level required to equip sacred and ancestral items has been reduced. Sacred is now 35, and ancestral is now 55. Well, that's a pretty big change. So you can get your sacred items literally... That's what is it? 35 is when we normally leave normal difficulty, right? And then 55, that's about when you leave. Say, definitely, that's a big change because you can start getting your ancestral equipment way sooner. So these are the patch note changes, and they have the changes in red. So we've actually gone over all of these before, but well, these are new changes here. HellTide has been updated to provide more challenges and rewards. HellTide threat. As you battle through HellTide, you'll generate a threat, and how much you will be determined by the difficulty of the monster and how often you're securing tortured gifts within the HellTide. There are 3 HellTide threat tiers that increase the danger and frequency of the monster ambushes. At tier 3, you'll become Hellmarked. Achieving maximum threat will initiate a brief ambush. Frenzy of maximum enemy density. The ambush will end with a final Hellborn spawn, an immensely powerful agent of Hell resurrected from the tortured souls of Sanctuary. Most powerful champions. There are 5 variant representing each class in Diablo 4. Upon activating the Hellborn ambush, your threat will reset, and dying will reset your threat. Interesting. So another interesting thing about this, what they don't really mention here, is that if you have 4 people in a group, or even if you have, say, 12 people on the same screen, and all of you activate your Hellmarked effect basically at the same time, when it says maximum enemy density, it means maximum enemy density for you. And when you have 4 people in a group, it literally spawns 4 sets of maximum enemy density. And if you have like 12 people all standing in the same area, which is totally possible with the new boss that they allow you to spawn, you can literally have like 12 Hellmarked density mob packs spawning at the same time. And it gets absolutely insane, and it is a blast. It is absolutely crazy. We've had it happen a couple times during the PTR where literally we had everybody spawn their Hell-marked ambush at the same time, and it was nuts. Just absolutely nuts. Accursed Ritual. So this is the kind of like where you're going to have this happen too, because the Accursed Ritual is where everybody goes to put in their baneful hearts. And so if everybody's standing there at the same time, all fighting monsters, then they're very likely to have this like multiple Hell-marked situation where there's just trillions of monsters on the screen. Accursed Ritual. Baneful Hearts can primarily be earned through opening tortured gift chests and can be used at the Accursed Ritual location. Baneful Hearts can also drop from Hellborn Demons and Doomsayers. A scene of shocking gore, the Accursed Ritual's ultimate test into the disturbing lengths of the followers of Hell and will go to appease their dark wishes. It's here you can begin the Accursed Ritual. Deposit 3 Baneful Hearts to begin the ritual, and you will be swarmed with a dense demonic ambush. Other players within your subzone will be alerted that the ritual has begun. You'll see like a white circle, sort of like indicating the location of where the ambush is happening, kind of telling you to go join. The ambush will climax in the arrival of the Blood Maiden. The Blood Maiden is not to be underestimated, because even on some ridiculously tanky characters, I have seen the Blood Maiden pretty much just one-shot people. And I don't know exactly what her attack is or how it works, but let's just say that if you're not careful, she can annihilate you from existence, even if you're in like your top tier best in slot equipment. Now, of course, I haven't had a chance to like 100% min-max a character and then go fight the Blood Maiden. But on the PTR with characters that were pretty well equipped and were capable of like 200 pits, she was still able to one-shot them, which was pretty crazy. They did make some nerfs to World Tier 1 and 2 HellTides. They basically removed the roaming bosses and the fire that was falling from the sky. And the monster density was adjusted to match expected difficulty of World Tier 3 and 4. So basically they just kind of like made World Tier 1 and 2 HellTides a little bit easier, but also boosted them up a little bit. So Tyrael's Might... looks like there's no changes to Tyrael's Might. This was the unique chest armor that they added that's pretty darn cool. Basically gives you like unlimited artillery shrine as long as you're at full health. Yen's Blessing Boots, it looks like they increased the percentage to chance cast from 20 to 30 to 40 to 60. That's a pretty big boof. And they reduced the time cooldown from 12 to 8 seconds. So increase the percentage chance and reduce the time. That means Yen's unique boots are going to be even more powerful than I thought they were. They already looked kind of good before with the 12-second chance, or every 12 seconds you'd get one non-mobility, one non-ultimate skill. But now it's every 8 seconds, and it's at a 60% chance, so it's going to happen all the time. Let's take a look and see what other changes. We've already kind of gone over a lot of this earlier. Looks like they changed the aspect of the fierce winds. Your shout create, looks like they nerfed it from 5 to 3 Dust Devils, which is understandable because they were literally covering the entire screen and were making it so that people couldn't see anything. And then on top of that, they increased the damage to compensate for the fact that they decreased the number, which makes sense. So it went from 15 to 20% and from 5 Dust Devils to 3. I mean, honestly, that's probably the best path of action anyway. When you're if it's covering the entire screen and you can't see anything, obviously reducing the number and increasing the damage is the go-to there. Aspect of Fevered Mauling, that's the one for the Druid Maul attack. We were talking about that earlier because it basically makes your Maul into a frenzy ability. It looks like they buffed it up a little bit, so it went from 2% to 2.5%. And the damage reduction was reduced from 4% to 3%. So they basically made it faster, but also reduced the damage reduction a little bit. So instead of, what was it, 5 stacks, so 4 times 5, instead of 4 times 5, now it's 3 times 5. So 15% damage reduction instead of, what, 16, 17, 18... So like 20% is what it was, so they reduced it by what, 5% basically. Aphotic aspect. This was the one with I was talking about earlier with the skeletal priest makes your skeleton warriors do shadow damage. Looks like they increased the shadow damage by 5%, so up from 15 to 20%. That's not bad. Scoundrel Kiss, they talked about this one during the campfire chat. They said that the pattern that the exploding arrows had was a little unpredictable and hard to use, so they changed it to be a little bit more predictable. Honestly, it did look better. It did look better. Saboteur's Ring, they reduced the lucky hit chance by a pretty substantial margin. So instead of 5%, they reduced it down to a 2% lucky hit chance. Might be because there were some people who had some pretty broken grenade builds during the PTR, so maybe that's a response to that. Now they're messing around with fractured winter glass. So your conjurations have up to a 50 to 70% chance, so reduced from 70 to 100% chance. So they reduced it by 30%, right? 7, 8, 9, 10. So yeah, 30% reduction in percent chance for the conjurations to cast. Extra explosions from the aspect of Frozen Orb do not trigger this effect, as the unique calls out casting. This is unattended. Interaction was fixed since PTR. What? So the aspect of the Frozen Orbit, that's the one that allows Frozen Orb to cast twice, right? I'm pretty sure that's the one that allows your Frozen Orb to cast twice. Let me just double check here. Yeah, stays in place after reaching its destination and explodes 2 additional times for 30% of its damage. So they're saying that extra explosions from the aspect of Frozen Orbit do not trigger this effect, as the unique calls out casting. This unintended interaction was fixed since PTR. I think that means that the aspect of the Frozen Orbit's extra explosions were triggering the conjurations to be summoned.
Correct.
So basically, you were getting more conjurations than you should have originally gotten, which probably is a net nerf to the way that the ability worked. I mean, it was pretty well overperforming in PTR, so I wouldn't expect it to go down by a huge margin, especially since there's caps on the number of conjurations that you can have. Like, I think you can only have, what, like 3 Hydras, and you can only have, like, 6 blades and so forth and so on. So I don't think it's going to have too much of a change, because you can still cap out your conjurations. But it with the 70% reduction and then obviously not being able to cap out your conjurations as quickly, it sounds like there's going to be more of a build up to reaching your maximum damage output. They nerfed my Flame Weavers. No. Flame Weavers now split Firebolts into 3 instead of 4. Oh man, QQ. And damage buffed from 30 to 70%, from 10 to 30. Okay, so they reduced it by 1, but increased the damage output by, what is that, 40%? I guess
Seems like they're trying to reduce the clutter, but give you more damage.
Yeah, I mean, well, there was definitely a lot of clutter on the screen, that's for sure. Razor Plate. So Razor Plate has been updated to function with the new Master Working System. Now has 4 Thorn affixes instead of no affixes. New unique power. The Thorns has a 10% chance to deal 100 to 150% increased damage. Wow. So when we were talking about potentially building some crazy Thorn builds, but honestly, with the Thorns, with the Razor Plate now functioning with the Master Working System, so you can upgrade the Thorns affixes, and then with this new unique power added to Razor Plate, that honestly makes Razor Plate into a powerhouse for Thorns builds. It's honestly, it's now like irreplaceable. Like if you're doing a Thorns build, you're going to be using Razor Plate no matter what. It doesn't matter. Like if it's going to buff up your Thorns damage by up to 100 to 150% increased damage every time you're hitting, so it's a 10% chance to just basically double to almost 1.5 times damage your Thorns output. That's massive. I mean, poor Disobedience. I don't think anybody's going to use it anymore. We might have to hop on and take a look real quick, like at my characters, because not all of them are using Juggernaut, but some of them are. And just to see kind of like how much armor they actually have, because if most of them are already reaching like the 9,230 cap, I mean, Disobedience and Juggernaut have basically been relegated to antiques at this point. Assimilation, which is the one they changed with the dodge chance, a lot of people were using it basically to stack infinite health, essentially. It looks like they nerfed it from 5 to 20% to 5 to 10%, which it was pretty powerful, but it it's still going to be powerful. I mean, if you're running a dodge build and you have like nearly 100% dodge or whatever you can manage to muster, which is honestly possible because they basically made it so that you could put dodge on every single piece of equipment, you can probably still get pretty good use out of this even at 10%. The hectic aspect, cooldown reduction reduced from 2 to 4 seconds to 1 to 2 seconds. So they nerfed the hectic aspect. Monsters will still deal more damage the higher level they are, but their relative damage reduction will remain the same from level 100 onward. This change was made to account for level 200 boss monsters doing extreme amounts of damage to players that are capped for armor. I mean, I definitely admire the transparency that they're trying to achieve here in terms of armor, but I also, at the same time, I don't admire the fact that they're making the armor into a non-stat. Like, I'm not really quite sure how to explain it other than that, but if everybody can reach the armor cap without thinking about it, like if you don't have to put any effort into it whatsoever and you're all at the armor cap, well then what's the point of even having the armor stat anyway? Like that's kind of what it comes down to. Because as long as you have legendary equipment on that's 925 and you upgrade it and you're getting the armor value that you need to from your equipment and your strength stat, right? And that is giving you 9,230 and you didn't have to put any thought into bringing your armor value up, then at what point does armor just become a stat that you remove from the game and you just move on? Because it kind of seems like what they're doing without meaning to. Like it almost seems like if they want to do it this way, which I admire that they want to do it this way because it makes it more transparent and easier for people to see that they need this amount of armor to reach the cap, right? But they might actually need to go back and like rebalance the armor values so that
I think it's too low.
So that then, yeah, well, not only that, but they either they need to raise it so that it's a higher level, or rebalance the existing armor so that it goes to a point where it actually makes sense. Because right now it doesn't kind of it just kind of seems like they just took it completely off the table. They're like, oh well, you don't have to worry about armor anymore. Like it's you only need 9,230 armor. You know, thanks for stopping by. Like just have fun. I guess whatever.
If you think about it, Rogue is the tankiest class now. They have access to Fortify, they have access to high dodge, they can armor cap, and they can resist cap. No other class can get all of those.
And if they use the aspect of the Crowded Sage, they can basically just full heal every single time they dodge. Yeah.
They're probably the tankiest class in the game.
Let's see here. This is the line that a lot of you summon characters need to really look at. So Necromancer, Barbarian, Druid, and Sorcerer companions now receive 100% of their player attributes. So anything that is considered a companion, anything within the game, now gets 100% of your player attributes and hits like a freaking Mack truck now, if you hit like a Mack truck. So pay attention to this one because any summons, they're probably going to be really powerful this season. Damage reduction granted by Fortify has been increased by 10 to 15%. I guess that's honestly to make up for the fact that they took away Fortify from us. How much did they take away with the gems? They took away what was it, 3% per?
Correct.
So it was 3, 6,
18.
No, so they gave us 5 flat, which since it's not like individual, because those were applying individually, I think it was like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. That 15 might have made up for the loss of the sapphires. So that might just completely cancel out the loss of the sapphires. Cooldown reduction is now capped at 75%, and they did put an annotation on this that basically said this was only equipment. So the highest amount of cooldown reduction you can get from equipment is 75%. But they did say that specific cooldown reductions coming from like abilities, skills, like unique effects and things like that could transcend this level, but they wanted to cap off the amount of cooldown reduction you could get from equipment, which actually makes kind of sense because Bob during the PTR had like completely hacked his character so that he had like no cooldowns left using the greater affixes. Because you know how you can have so many greater affixes on your character, and the hell freaking resolution on my monitor just changed randomly. What am I at right now? 1280 by 1024. Beautiful. Ugh. What is ugh? What the hell is this? Ugh. What is even going on right now? It looks so grainy and ugly. What happened to my monitor? It's so ugly. I don't even understand what the hell's going on right now. I can't even read the text on the screen anymore. That's disgusting looking. It's look at it. It's disgusting. Physical damage calculations against damage reduction now caps at level 100. The maximum evade charges affixes has been increased from 2 to 3. Okay. So we get more evades just in general now without any equipment. So we get 3. So then we can have what, 3 on a piece of on boots. So we can get 5 total. The attacks that reduce evade cooldowns affix has been increased from 0.8 to 1.5 seconds. It's kind of nice. That's the one that a lot of people wouldn't use because it didn't increase your charges, but this one would technically reduce. Looks like the Oculus builds might have gotten a little bit of a buff there. The evades grant movement speed affix has been increased from 50% to 125%. That's pretty crazy. But isn't it only like 1 or 2 seconds or something? Like when you evade, you get like a 50% movement speed for like 1 second. So now it's 125% for that 1 or 2 seconds. All resistances from amulets has been increased from 19 to 25%. Single element resistances on rings has been increased by 8 to 10%. I'm not sure I understand what's going on here. Like so they made armor ridiculously easy to cap. Then they're increasing the resistances from all your equipment, which is going to make resistances ridiculously easy to cap. So everybody's going to be sitting easily at the 85% armor cap and at the 70% resistance caps, like with absolute ease. There's going to be nobody's going to have to try to hit those caps. What's the point of having the caps at all if everybody hits the caps easily? I don't get it. I mean, it kind of seems like they're just taking that out of the equation to almost like make us feel good. They're like, don't you feel good? You've got 85% armor cap. Don't you feel good? You've got 70% resistance cap, and then you still get one shot by bosses because you don't have enough damage reduction or health. It just seems kind of weird. Like you can already get 70% resistance caps relatively easily, and you can already get the armor cap relatively easily. So making it easier to get both of those just kind of makes it ridiculously easier in many, many ways. Barbarian. Let's see here. Additionally, the following updates have been applied for Dust Devils. The maximum number of Dust Devils that can be active at once is now 15. Dust Devils now move more quickly and dissipate sooner. So, I mean, I think we saw just by the video that they showed that Dust Devils are going to be a whole lot less of a problem in Season 4 than we thought they were. Like, in PTR, it was absolutely insane, and judging by that video, it looks way better.
Yeah, they're not as big, and they don't look like they even leave the pack you spawn them. Now they just stay in that pack, and they dissipate quick. Like, kill the pack, and that's it.
All right, let's go forward from here. So they took away, on the Wind Slashers aspect, they took away one of the things. So it used to say triple the amount of Dust Devils created if Double Swing is cast twice within 2 seconds. So it no longer triples them. Which makes sense, because they're trying to reduce the screen clutter, and the screen clutter is pretty bad. Was pretty bad. Aspect of Fierce Winds, Dust Devils created reduced from 5 to 3. So it looks like Dust Devils got hit pretty hard by this. I mean, I don't even know if the damage went down on the Dust Devils. Chances are the damage is still about the same, but they just reduced the total number of Dust Devils that you can have on the screen at any given time. Fields of Crimson, damage bonus increased from 20 to 30%. Okay. Ancient Oath, bonus damage duration increased from 3 to 5 seconds. All right. I don't know why they keep going with these short numbers in the first place. Like, do they really think that a buff that lasts 1 or 2 or 3 seconds is really going to be all that useful to most people? Somebody had a joke during the stream, and it cracked me up, and I almost died. He said, damage on Tuesdays. You mean damage on Mondays, because we can't even make it to Tuesdays because the buffs are so short. And dude, I was dying because he's right. Like literally, the buffs half the time are so short you can't even use them. Wariness, reduced damage from elites increased from 10 to 15%. Okay, so barbarians get a little bit of, or sorry, druids get a little bit of buff there from the damage reduction versus elites. Wolves, they talked about this. They increased the health of the wolves, and then they reduced the respawn rate of the wolves. So basically, they're going to be a lot more prevalent now with 200% more HP and respawn reduced from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. Even if they die, they'll be back up in 5 seconds, and with double the health, it'll be far less likely for them to die. And then, of course, with them inheriting 100% of your stats, that also means that they're also going to be less likely to die. So the wolves should be much more prevalent in general. Hurricane damage increased from 134% to 187%. That's interesting. A little bit of a buff there for Hurricane. Lacerate. It made some changes to Lacerate. Your shapeshifting skills deal 4% increased damage for 40 seconds up to 40%. 10 seconds up to 40%. You deal 4% increased damage for 10 seconds up to 40%. I'm not really sure what they changed there. Oh, I see. They removed the shapeshifting modifier. So before it was your shapeshifting skills would deal the additional damage. Now they're changing it to just simply you deal 4% increased damage for 10 seconds up to 40%. Kind of removing it from the shapeshifting tree entirely. So you don't have to be a werewolf or a werebear to get benefit out of Lacerate. Now you can get benefit out of it no matter what. Let's check out some of the other changes they made to the patch notes. Waxing Gibbous, life on kill replaced with spirit on kill. That's interesting. Bonus movement speed increased from 5 to 8 seconds on Decompose. Again, another change in the right direction. So changing a short buff to a slightly longer buff, so it's actually useful. So 5 seconds, it's kind of short. 8 seconds is a lot better. You'll find that, like, especially with a movement speed bonus buff or something like that, 5 seconds won't really feel like all that much. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really like really short movement speed buffs because it makes your character feel really jerky and kind of odd. Like your character's constantly like slow 1 second and fast 1 second and then slow 1 second and then fast 1 second. So it's kind of nicer to have that be a longer duration so that it's a little smoother. Shadow Mages. So they changed the buff here. Additional Shadow Bolt now occurs every second attack after the second upgrade. Change to the second upgrade now has an additional Shadow Bolt fired every 3 attacks, down from 4. So that's even more Shadow Blight key passives that you could potentially get there. So that's every 3 attacks. I'm trying to think what that would be. Like 444 would be 12, so you'd get basically 3 attacks every 12 shots. 369, so you get another attack every 9 shots. So it's definitely going to up the amount of Shadow Blade key passives you get for sure. Bone Mages have a 25% chance to cast Bone Splinters or Bone Spear if you equip skills. So they changed that. Now it's Bone Mages now cast Bone Splinters or Bone Spear every 6th attack if it's on your action bar. So that is going to decrease the amount of Bone Spears that they're going to fire dramatically. As we talked about earlier, they would get about 25%. At a 25% chance with 5 mages, you were looking at about 3 average casts of Bone Spear per rotation. Now you're looking at 1 cast of Bone Spear per rotation, or per 6 rotations. But that's for all of them. So you basically get 6 shots every 6 shots every 6 attacks instead of 3 shots every rotation, which would be like 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So like theoretically in the previous version you might have gotten about 18 Bone Spears with the 25% chance, give or take. With this new one, you're only going to get 6. So 6 versus 18. So it's quite a hefty nerf on the amount of potential Bone Spears or Bone Splinters that are going to come out of the Bone Mages. They might not be as useful as we think this season, but still worth checking out. I mean, 6 bone spears every 6 attacks versus 18 every 6 attacks it's a hefty nerf, but it's still a lot of bone spears. Like it's still a pretty large number of bone spears. So you'll have to see. And of course, that's 6 times 5. So you're gonna have actually, I didn't even calculate that. Hold on, we need to calculate this properly. All right, so if you have 5 mages firing 6 bone spears every 6 rotations, so that's times 6. That means you have potentially 30 bone spears coming out. 5. So yeah, so one per mage. No, because it's just 1 per mage. So it's 1 per mage every 6 attacks with 5 mages. So it's actually less than I thought. It's not 6, it's 5. So it's only 5 bone spears, not 6 bone spears. Yeah. Yeah, it's not particularly all that amazing. I feel like that's a hefty nerf in the direction of probably they were broken, overpowered. I mean, let's just be honest, they were probably broken and they needed to dial it back, because honestly this sounded absolutely insane. And this is probably more it's probably more decently damaged as opposed to absolutely crazy. Let's see what other changes they made in the patch notes. Lidless Wall got a buff from 25% chance to 30% chance. Bloodless Scream got a buff from Essence Gain 10 to Essence Gain 20. Dominate Glyph, bonus overpower damage per willpower reduced from 39.9% to 14.9% at Glyph level 21. So they're nerfing overpower some more. They've already nerfed overpower several times. This is another overpower nerf. I guess they feel like they haven't nerfed overpower enough. Poor overpower. It was underpowered for what, like multiple seasons, and then finally when overpower became overpowered, it was too overpowered, and now they're nerfing it back into underpowered status. It's really quite unfortunate that they finally got us to use overpower, but it was too much, I guess. Uncanny Treachery, dealing damage on dazed enemy. Agility grants stealth for 4 seconds. When stealth breaks, you gain 85 to 100% dodge chance. Has been nerfed to 10 to 15% dodge chance. I kind of saw that coming because they changed the aspect of the Crowded Sage to give you those heals, and it made it seem like that if you use this aspect with the aspect of the Crowded Sage, you could basically just full heal every single time you used a agility skill that granted stealth, and then when the stealth breaks, you would gain the dodge chance, which would immediately heal you back to full, because 100% dodge chance plus a 20% heal every time you dodged would mean that you would only need like 5 dodges, right, until you got to max HP. So it makes sense that they nerfed this if they're trying to keep the dodge chance heal the same, because they don't want you to be able to basically full heal yourself with Uncanny Treachery. So a pretty big nerf there to the healing capability of the rogue. Escape Artist, number of attacks dodged reduced from 2 to 7 to 2 to 5. Smoke Grenade effect cooldown has reduced from 45 to 20 seconds. Let's see what else they got here. Resistant assailants, when using concealment, resistance and max resistance have increased duration from 4 to 6 seconds. Beastfall boots. They did change the Beastfall boots. Damage bonus reduced from 0.5 to 1.5 per energy consumed to 0.25 to 0.75. I kind of saw that coming. The Beastfall boots are pretty powerful. Energy restored from using cooldown increased from 5 to 15%. These were the boots that basically allowed you to spend all of your energy to a single ability and just essentially annihilate something from existence. And people were using them to very good effect to annihilate bosses out of existence in like one shot. But with that, they basically halved the damage of the Beastfall boots, so they're going to do about half what they were doing before. At 0.75 per energy consumed versus 1.5, it's a 50% reduction. Eaglehorn, damage bonus increased from 40 to 60 to 50 to 70. Sky Hunter, damage bonus increased from 10 to 30 to 20 to 40%. It looks like they are kind of adjusting a lot of the unique items to power them up a little bit, although some of them are getting nerfed. Let's see. Shimmering Ice Armor. You reduce its cooldown by 1 second for every 50 mana you spend, so they reduced that by half. It used to be 2 seconds for every 50 mana you spend. Now casting a conjuration skill grants you 10 to 20% damage reduction. They reduced that from 25% damage reduction. So they're, again, removing damage reduction from the game. This was a pretty powerful one when I was using the Frozen Orb build with the Fractured Winterglass, because it basically gave you like a permanent 25% damage reduction because you're constantly casting conjurations. And as a 5% reduction on that isn't like a massive amount, but it's going to affect the tankability of that character. Staff of Lama Sem, critical strike damage, replaced with ranks of charged bolts. Talrosh's iridescent loop, maximum stacks now capped at 4. All resistant variants increased from 8, 3 to 10 to 4. All maximum stacks now capped at 4. So you can no longer get all of the elements. So one of the things that people were doing with Talrosh's iridescent loop was you were getting fire, ice, and lightning, which is what the sorceress is capable of, but then they were also pulling in like shadow damage and poison damage from various sources so they could get their stacks up to 5. So the stacks have now been capped at 4 for Talrosh's iridescent loop, so you can no longer pull in all the elements with the build, but you can still pull in one additional element over the fire, ice, and lightning. So you're still gonna be able to pull in like a poison or a shadow or something to get the 4 stacks, but that is an effective nerf to Talrosh's iridescent loop because it's no longer going to provide that extra, 15% multiplier. So they basically took 15% multiplier off of Talrosh's iridescent loop. What's up, Patrick? Flamescar, Ember damage increased by 25%. Staff of Endless Rage, damage bonus increased from 20 to 40% to 40 to 60. Asu's Heirloom, evade grants movement speed, affects duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. There's a lot of changes in these patch notes, by the way. I do have a full video going over these patch notes. What I'm focusing on today, by the way, is the red annotations, which is basically the changes from the previous patch notes to these. Elixir of resource cost reduced by 10% instead of 15, so they nerfed the elixir of resource a little bit. Both of them by, that one was reduced by 5, and this one was reduced by 10%. User interface, there is now a pop-up on the HUD when picking up materials, so they took that away. Gauntlet trials. Boss monsters won't drop a shrine if they have been regenerated by a pillar of proving. That's interesting. So that was one of the things where you could get like multiple shrines and you could have like freaking 10, 15 shrines in the same place, felt like. But so you're no longer going to be able to get multiple shrines anymore from that. That's interesting. Tormented Ruins was added to the World Tier 4 rotation. That's one extra dungeon added to the World Tier 4 Nightmare Dungeon rotation for Season 4. Miscellaneous traversal skills such as Leap and Teleport can now easily travel the distance to go to the edge of the screen. This will improve parity with mouse and keyboard players. Note that with ultra-wide monitors, you may not traverse to the edge of the screen, edge of the monitor, as traversal abilities have a set maximum distance they can travel to. The bonus experience for World Tiers 2, 3, and 4 have been increased. They added in 2, so 2 was increased from 20 to 50%. Gives you more reason to run World Tier 2 early on, I guess. Fixed an issue where the guaranteed overpower from Earth Striker's aspect could not be used by Ground Stomp. Fixed an issue where each time the Ancients summoned by the aspect of Ancestral Charge would grant stacks of Flawless Technique, Legendary Paragon node. Fixed an issue where the Call of Ancients was not properly scaling with ultimate damage affixes. Fixed an issue where Earth Spike would deal increased damage by exponentially hitting when hitting multiple stacked targets. Well, that's interesting. Fixed an issue where additional landslides from the Aftershock aspect didn't fully apply the enhanced landslide upgrade modifier. Fixed an issue where the Inner Beast Legendary Paragon node did not trigger with the automatic shapeshift granted by Mad Wolf's Glee or Insatiable Fury. Fixed an issue where the bonus attack speed and critical strike chance granted by the Night Howler's aspect was inconsistently applied for minions. Fixed an issue where Blood Howl will not work properly when Ravens was also equipped. Fixed an issue where the Spirit Glyph would only stack once instead of intended 6 times. Fixed an issue where Shred could target invisible enemies. Necromancer. Fixed an issue where the Shadow and Bone Mages did not cast Blizzard when using the Coldbringers aspect. Fixed an issue where the Skeleton Reapers had inconsistencies when targeting enemies. Fixed an issue where the movement speed bonus from Death's Approach was marked as multiplicative when it was additive. Fixed an issue where the movement speed bonus from the Corporeal Glyph would persist after unequipping the glyph or when the player had no active minions. Fixed an issue where the chance for Skeleton Reapers to spawn a corpse was much lower than displayed. Fixed an issue where the casting Bone Spirit very close to an enemy could cause the skill to not track properly and miss. Fixed an issue where Hued Flesh did not trigger Necrotic Carapace. Rogue. Fixed an issue where the aspect of surprise calculated damage in a way that was inconsistent with other grenade effects. Fixed an issue where enhanced rapid fire was giving less critical strike chance than expected. Fixed an issue where non-offensive skills such as concealment could consume the buff from impetus. Sorceress. Fixed an issue where the meteorite summoned by Armageddon aspect wouldn't deal damage. Fixed an issue where the tooltip for an incinerate did not accurately reflect how much mana it had consumed. Fixed a rare issue where crackling energies could fail to spawn. General. Fixed an issue where free casts of abilities, such as Sorceress's Frozen Orb enchantment, were triggering the evade cooldown reduction from the affix that reduces cooldown when attacking. Fixed an issue where monsters would stop spawning during the Cursed Shrine event if all present monsters were killed by leveling up. Fixed an issue where you couldn't interact with the Altar of the Venomous Note collecting the Whisper Bounty. Fixed an issue where the Bloodmark player did not count as an elite enemy for the aspect of the Protector in PvP. Fixed an issue where Aberrant Cinders, which could be picked up, had no functionality, remained on the ground after HellTide ended. Fixed an issue where the visual effect from the Blood Blister explosions could be invisible if the Blood Blister itself was not visible. Fixed an issue where the Blood Boiling and Metamorphosis aspects were not scaling properly with weapon damage. Dungeons. Fixed an issue when re-entering dungeon for Exhuming the Forgotten could cause server disconnect. Fixed an issue where you would not be able to leave the gauntlet after the party member joined and it was voted to stop the run. Fixed an issue where the Slay All Enemies objective in Golden Canals, Lubin's Rest, and Conclave could fail to complete and block progression. This is what? User interface and experience. Fixed an issue where trade chat could still be entered even when it was disabled in the settings. Fixed an issue where the Feats of Strength completion percentage was not accurate when all challenges were completed. Fixed an issue where the number of affixes are inconsistent between Nightmare Sigils and Spawned Nightmare Dungeons. Fixed an issue where the Inspect window could persist on the screen and block the trade window when trading in local co-op. Fixed an issue where comparisons involving affixes acquiring via enchanting were not accurate. Miscellaneous. Fixed an issue where vampiric facts from the Season of Blood could still drop in certain instances. Fixed an issue where weather effects during HellTide could stop functioning while moving through an area affected by the HellTide. It seems to me, honestly, I'm looking at some of these changes, that we may not see the full breadth of these changes until we hop into the game. I mean, some of this stuff that they're telling us, I mean, it certainly seems like you can see some of it from here, but the number of changes that they made in this patch, so the PTR patch, and then this is, of course, the updated notes from the PTR where they're changing things slightly from this point. I mean, some of the things are apparent, like, you know, just simply changing the buff on an item, but a lot of this stuff, like when they talked about like balancing out the tempering mechanics, like they haven't gone over any of the tempering mechanics here. So we don't know any of the tempering affixes that they changed, really. We kind of have a general idea, like somewhat, of some of the changes that they made, because, like, you know, they gave us you know, that obviously there was going to be a limit on how big you could make the items, so like 100% on that. And there are certain caps that they put into place, like 75% on the cooldown reduction. But we don't really know like the breadth of the changes to the tempering system until we actually see what's going on. One thing I'd like to do is hop into the game real quick and check out these armor numbers. Let's see if we can pull these up real quick. And can I please fix my display? I don't even know what the hell's going on right now with my display. It says 14. It's got me set up to like some sort of terrible resolution, I swear. Let's how do we do this? How do we make this better? We need to make this better. I ain't never had this happen before in my life. Apparently my monitor just decides it doesn't want to work today. Let's change the refresh rate. Maybe it'll let us modify the settings if we change the refresh rate. 30 hertz is so terrible though. Ew. Ew. Why is it like that? Ew. You know what? We're gonna do this. I'm gonna do a quick reboot of my PC, and then we're gonna hop into the game. We're gonna take a look at some of this stuff real quick. I'm not dealing with that. I'm not dealing with that. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I don't care about that notepad. I'm still a little baffled on their change with the rare items. I don't understand why they would go from changing the rare items, you know, to be useless, obviously, and then they doubled down on making them useless. They're like, yeah, we hear you guys. The rare items are useless, but that's the way we want it, so they're just going to be useless. And you know, we might make them more useful later on in like a future patch. Oh, also, we made them even more useless by removing their deconstruction materials. That one blew me back, man. I was kind of expecting them to just kind of stay the same as what we saw in PTR, but I didn't expect them to make it even worse to the point where literally they were even more useless than what they were in PTR. Oh man. I mean, I think we're gonna see a good season. Like, let me not talk completely negative about everything. I mean, them screwing with the rare items is a negative, but there's other things that I think are good. Obviously, they've cleaned up a lot of the icon, like the stupid dust devils and all the other crazy things that have been going on. So I mean, it definitely looks a lot better with the dust devils now. I mean, from what they showed us during the live stream, it was way better than it was before. Much clearer, much easier to see and to represent. Let's go ahead and pull up Diablo 4 real quick. I kind of wanted to see how much armor value my characters had. That's basically what I wanted to go and look at. Like, I'm kind of curious whether or not the armor value for all of the characters is near 9,230, which is the supposed new cap that you have to hit. And I kind of want to see how close my characters are to this cap that we're trying to hit. How close my characters are to this cap that we're trying to hit. Hey, you shush, Ginger. I was pulling back up the stream chat so I can actually see what you guys are saying. Because I rebooted my computer. The hell is the Plus program? All right, let's take a look at some of these characters. Like, let's go back to some of my older characters too. Like, so let's look at all of them. Hey, what's up, Craig? All right, so how much armor does my Necromancer have? This is one of my older Necromancers. He's using some pretty crappy equipment from like season 1. He's got like 766 plus 25s. Like you can see his equipment's not the greatest, right? So he is using a shield, so he does have some armor coming from his shield, but he's sitting at 7,572, which isn't far off from the 9,320 cap. So this is a guy using mainly like outdated equipment, and he is actually close to that cap. And I don't even think he's using really all that much like he's not using any aspects. He doesn't have like the Juggernaut aspect or anything on. So he does have a 25.5% armor value increase on his armor. And then does he have any other armor value increases? He does not. So looking at what we see so far, it looks like we're pretty much almost there with honestly just upgrading our equipment. So let's go to somebody who's a little bit newer. Let's take a look at my Barbarian. So there's Frenzied Life.
Well, items can roll armor now too. Don't forget that.
Yeah, I know, and it should be exceedingly easy to get the maximum armor value. So Frenzied Life, who is utilizing a 26.2 armor value, he does have some pieces that are under 925. He has a 858 plus 25, and 854 plus 25. He's got a couple like less than perfect pieces. But he does have two armor bonuses. He's got a 26.2% armor bonus on his armor and a 23.3% armor bonus on his pants. He's sitting at 8,893, so he's like right there. He's just like, what is that, like 300 shy, basically? Not even that, well, like 9... Yeah, about 300, maybe about 400 shy armor value. So he could very easily hit that cap just by simply grabbing, say, it's like a 925 armor base instead of an 854 plus 25. And here he has an 858 plus 25. So he's missing armor value here and there. And he's also not using Juggernaut or Disobedience. Let's see. Let's take a look at her. So Frostbite. She's one of my newer characters from, I think, Season 2 or Season 3. I can't remember. So she's sitting at 6,936. And she doesn't have... Well, she has an armor value on her plate. Boots are relatively under-armored. No armor on her armor. No armor percentage on her amulet. I mean, she's got one armor percentage, 27% on her plate, and she's got several pieces of under 925 equipment, but she's sitting at 6,900, which is what, 7,000, so 8, 9. So she's about 2.3k under. And in the PTR, we noticed that you could literally get armor value as a stat, like an affix on your equipment. So you could very easily get like one affix of armor value on a piece of equipment and cap out. Let's take a look at something who's a little bit more ridiculous. So like some of my newer characters had ridiculous levels of armor value. Let's take a look at Bone Nukes. I'm pretty sure he's using the Juggernaut aspect, which is putting him way over. I don't even know why you would use the Juggernaut aspect anymore. I feel like it's just, unless you just wanted to completely ignore armor value and just throw the Juggernaut aspect on. But I don't know if you need it. He's sitting at 8,727. Is he using the Juggernaut aspects? No, he is not. So without the Juggernaut aspect, he's already almost at this 85% cap. And again, he has a non-925 item there, a non-925 item there, a non-925 item there. He's also not using a shield. So if he was using a shield, that would go up tremendously. So if I threw on Lidless, and now he's at 9,791. So he's immediately above the cap, which was 9,320. So even just throwing a shield on this guy with no Juggernaut aspect, he's already able to hit that number. I think pretty much everybody's going to be hitting the 9,320 cap with relative ease, or at least close to it. Honestly, Juggernaut is an aspect, and that's another really kind of crazy thing when you think about it, is that the Juggernaut aspect is something that consumes an aspect slot. And if you don't need the Juggernaut aspect, there's no reason to use it. And on top of that, if you can put an armor affix, like for instance, let's say you're rolling one of these pieces of equipment, and you can roll armor, just raw armor value on your piece of equipment, then there's a very good chance that you can avoid using the Juggernaut aspect entirely just by simply throwing the raw affix on there, and then you can take that aspect slot and put it into something else so that you can actually have something that's more useful than raw armor value, like damage reduction, for instance, which is probably going to be what everybody's going to want with this upcoming thing, is damage reduction or some kind of healing, because it seems like we're going to have a massive health pool, and we're going to have to like reimburse that health pool a lot. As an example, like see how much health I have right now, which is like 8,859. And if I go to some of my other characters and I look at how much health they have, even with like really good equipment. So let's go to Frenzied Life. I'm pretty sure Frenzied Life has like a grandfather and a bunch of other crazy stuff. So his HP is probably off the charts. But comparatively to what you're going to see in like PTR or Season 4, I don't even think my HP is really that high. So I've got 27,863 HP with a grandfather and a Harlequin Crest Shaco, with both have some pretty crazy HP numbers on them. So you got 4,584 HP on the grandfather, and you've got 2,292 HP on the hat. So even with those two items, like I'm sitting at 14,948 without them. My Barbarian, when I was testing it on the PTR, I was literally sitting at what was it, like almost nearly 39k, and I did not have a grandfather, and I did not have an Harlequin Crest. So I mean, I was sitting at least almost like 10 to 15,000 HP higher. Wow, look at that resolution. I don't know what's going on with my monitor, guys, but it just randomly changes resolution now. I don't even know what resolution I'm at. Look at how big that mouse is. It's bigger than this character over here. What is going on right now? What resolution even is this? 1,280 by 1,024? Really? Okay. All right. That's the resolution I wanted. Look at my gear, guys. I feel like I'm on a computer from like 1997 or something. Like I just got my new 1,280 by 720 monitor, and I got my like super big mouse going here. It's because I'm blind and I can't see anything. At least you're not gonna lose that mouse. Like, man, look at how big. Look, my hands are so big I can grab my barbarian's titties. Look at this. Oh baby. Oh yeah. Look at that. Okay, I'm done. All right, I'm done. I'm done. I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. I don't know what else to go over. We got to juice him. What? We're juicing him? Juicing who we juicing? Let's juice him, boys. Let me check my barbarian real quick. Juicing. Getting that butter juicing, rawhide. Squeak. I stroke his beard. I'm gonna stroke his beard like this. I'm sorry. 6,539 armor. Okay, so he's pretty low. He's got a total armor value there. And he's wearing temerity, so he's got no armor value there. He's also running 800, 877, 847, 841. So he's got a lot of like less than appropriate armor value equipment. Of course, he has no strength, so. What about Sir William over here? He's a newer druid set up with newer equipment. Let's take a look at him. $13,624, and he's using the Juggernaut aspect. It's pretty much what I assume. Like whenever I see the like above 9K, they've got the Juggernaut aspect on. But I guess what this really means is you could throw the Juggernaut aspect on early on before you cap your armor out. Just not even really worry about it, because Juggernaut gives you 5,929 at a 925 item. Actually, this isn't even a 925 item. It's an 869 plus 25. So you're getting a pretty huge armor value early on where you can cap out your armor. And then later on, once you get your equipment set up, you could take it off and just not even worry about it anymore. I guess Juggernaut will still have some usefulness just early on, just helping you reach those magic numbers. I don't know, guys. I think that the season is gonna look. It's looking pretty good. I don't know why my resolution keeps changing randomly. I guess I'm going to have to figure this out. Every time I change it, it just changes back on its own. It's like, you know what? It's like, you don't need this resolution. This is a terrible resolution. And look, you can't even read anything. Like, you can't even read the shortcuts. Like, I don't even know what's going on. I guess I need a new monitor, guys. I need a new monitor. Please donate. I need a new monitor. I need a 4K, 32-inch. Television style, like real big. So I don't have to strain my poor old man eyes. I'm kidding. I'm not old yet. I'm only 39. I'll be 40 in June, though. All right, guys and gals. It's been fun. I don't really think there's much more to talk about with this. We definitely will be looking into this when the new season launches. So the new season is going to be launching on May 14th, for those of you guys who are unaware. It's about, 2 weeks out. I also have another ARPG I'm going to be checking out in the next couple days. It's called V Rising. It's a vampire ARPG. I'm going to be playing that on the 8th, so somewhere in between the two, and we're going to have some fun with that game. Apparently, it's an ARPG, but it's a ARPG based on vampires, which, I don't know, vampires are kind of cool, but at the same time, it's not necessarily like undead and demons, so to speak, but more. There's even a Castlevania update for the game, which has like Belmont in it and Dracula and whatnot. So very, very vampire-esque style ARPG. So if you're interested in vampires, we'll have some fun playing around with that. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these fun adventures. I might pull up a Diablo 2 stream later today. And as always, keep watching.